Chapter 3576. Extreme Killing Force. Everyone looked at the spiritual space with shining eyes. They were obviously looking forward to it. In the battle between Nie Tian and Lan Zhuiying, Nie Tian had an unexpected victory. What would be the result of this battle? Although Qi Sha was ranked second only to Bodhiseed, most people felt that Yin Liujie had a higher chance of winning. Many people did not understand why Qi Sha had such a high ranking. Bodhiseed was ranked first because he had the title of the leader of the Nine Wolves. But no one knew about Qi Sha at all. It was as if he was an expert who appeared out of thin air. No one knew his origin. But Yin Liujie was different. He had the title of the Nine Wolves, and his previous performance was also very amazing. He had defeated Su Kuanga, who was also one of the Nine Wolves. Looking at Qi Sha and Yin Liujie, Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly as a strange smile appeared on his face. He knew Qi Sha very well. He even saved Qi Sha with his own hands. He knew that among the three demonic heart physiques, Qi Sha was the strongest. But after Cher integrated with the heavenly sacred heart, it was not necessarily so. Cher had a very special position among the three demonic heart physique. Although she was a good physique, she had integrated with the heavenly sacred heart. And the power of the heavenly sacred heart was not weaker than the heaven-punishing demon heart. Nie Tian believed that Cher could completely get rid of the control of the Emperor of the Netherworld with the power of the heaven-punishing demon heart. You are Qi Sha, right? At this time, in the spiritual space, Yin Liujie looked at Qi Sha with a cold face, looking very arrogant. It was obvious that he did not take Qi Sha seriously. Next move, bring out your strongest power. Qi Sha twitched the corner of his mouth and said coldly. A cold intent filled the entire spiritual space, extremely chilling. At this moment, an extremely murderous aura covered the heaven and earth, as if to destroy everything in front of it. Feeling the murderous aura, Yin Liujie's face darkened and his eyes trembled. This kind of murderous aura made him feel a threat that penetrated deep into his divine soul. It was as if there was an invisible giant hand gripping him tightly, making it hard for him to breathe. Seize the chance to make one move. Just then, Qi Sha spoke again. His cold, murderous intent spread out like tentacles. It was terrifying. Arrogant. Yin Liujie's eyes darkened and he let out a low roar. His aura erupted like a ferocious beast, trying to break through the shackles. At this moment, he already knew that the person standing in front of him was an extremely terrifying opponent. He had to go all out in order to have a chance. Boom. In the next moment, Yin Liujie's aura burst out like a landslide. However, no matter how strong his aura was, he could still feel the murderous aura enveloping him like an unbreakable cage of murderous intent. You don't deserve to stand in front of me with only this level of strength. Qi Sha looked at Yin Liujie and sneered coldly, his eyes bursting with killing intent. Damn it! Yin Liujie let out a low roar. Suddenly, his aura erupted crazily, causing the void to tremble violently. Waves of terrifying aura, like a giant beast that could swallow the sky, seemed to be able to destroy everything. What a strong aura! The crowd looked at the aura circulating around Yin Liujie's body with trembling eyes, horrified. 5 wolves go! In the next moment, Yin Liujie roared like thunder. Suddenly, 5 giant wolves appeared behind him. An ice wolf that was like frost, a flame wolf that was like fire, a storm that was like a storm, a dark wolf that was like an abyss, and a golden wolf that was like a blazing sun. Yin Liujie seemed to have activated a terrifying seal in his body, forcibly condensing 5 giant wolves. The highest realm of the 7 wolves' ultimate kill could release 7 giant wolves at the same time. Yin Liujie could actually condense 5 giant wolves, which showed how strong he was. The power of 5 wolves? The corner of the Wolf Emperor's mouth twitched slightly when he saw this scene. He smiled faintly and murmured, "This power is very strong, but it's impossible to defeat Lord Qi Sha." Kill. Yin Liujie let out a low roar, and then the 5 wolves behind him rushed out at the same time. Like 5 mountains, they pressed down on Qi Sha. Trash. Qi Sha's eyes narrowed slightly, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He spat out 2 extremely contemptuous words coldly. In the next moment, he stretched out his palm and clenched it slightly. Suddenly, the surging murderous aura in the void tightened like a net. Then, a shocking scene appeared. Bang, 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 bang. A violent muffled sound came from the spiritual space. The giant wolves seemed to be oppressed by an invisible force and directly collapsed in the air. Puff! Immediately, an extremely murderous force broke through the air and attacked Enliojie. He didn't even have time to let out a final scream before his heart was directly penetrated and his figure disappeared. The extremely strange scene made everyone's eyes tremble, and they were dumbfounded on the spot. They couldn't imagine what kind of power Qi Sha had used to directly kill Enliojie. It seemed that in the spiritual space, Qi Sha was like the ruler there, controlling everything. Nie Tian frowned at this time, and his expression changed slightly. He felt that Qi Sha seemed to have a certain connection with the spiritual space. In that space, Qi Sha's aura was much stronger. The reason why Qi Sha could show such amazing combat strength had a lot to do with the spiritual space. At this time, Qi Sha's divine soul returned. He glanced at Enliojie coldly and didn't say a word. Enliojie's eyes trembled, and he was obviously very afraid. His body was trembling. Only then did he know how terrifying Qi Sha was. Nie Tian, are you ready? At this time, Qi Sha suddenly looked at Nie Tian and asked coldly. Any time. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his face calm. Although Qi Sha's killing method was very strange, Nie Tian was not afraid. So far, he hadn't shown his ultimate combat strength. In the battle between Qi Sha and Enliojie, Qi Sha won with an absolute advantage. And then, in the battle between Lan Zhuiying and Enliojie directly admitted defeat. Maybe he was afraid of entering the spiritual space again, or maybe he was afraid of Lan Zhuiying's identity. At this time, the top 3 of the Wolf Knight contest were born: Linden, Qi Sha, and Nie Tian. The next battle was the final battle. At this time, the Wolf Emperor stepped out, glanced at Nie Tian, and said lightly, "The battle of the top 3 will be decided by drawing lots." Linden, Qi Sha, and Nie Tian, the 3 of them stepped forward at the same time. The Wolf Emperor took out 3 battle lots and placed them in front of the 3. Linden was the first to step forward. He took the battle lot and opened it directly. There was only one word written on it: fight. Nie Tian and Qi Sha took the other 2 battle lots and opened them respectively. Nie Tian's battle lot had only one word written on it: fight. The Bodhi Seed's banner, on the other hand, read, "No battle." Chapter 3577. The Bodhi tree. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of Nie Tian's mouth as he gazed at the Bodhi tree seed. Among the 3 of them, 7 kills was the luckier one of the 3. Next would be the battle between Nie Tian and the Bodhi tree. Nie Tian, I'll be waiting for you. At that moment, 7 kills suddenly looked at Nie Tian. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile as he said in a deep voice, "Don't let me down." Nie Tian smiled and didn't say anything. "You too, please." The Wolf King glanced at Nie Tian and the Bodhi tree. Nie Tian and the Bodhi seed nodded slightly. As a thought entered their minds, their souls appeared in their respective soul spaces. Nie Tian, I won't hold anything back in this battle, the Bodhi seed said with a cold expression, his deep voice filled with frosty killing intent. Go all out, Nie Tian. Nie Tian shook his head. I will, Nie Tian said with a calm smile on his face. At this moment, everyone looked at the 2 in the spiritual space and started discussing. I didn't think that the leader of the 9 wolves, the Bodhi tree, is blind. Blind sword Bodhisattva. His eyes are blind, but his sword is not. Although he is blind, his sword intent is sharper than most swordsmen. Yeah, the Bodhi tree is the leader of the 9 wolves with a cultivation of the 5th stage of heaven rhythm. You can imagine how strong he is. If Nye Tian runs into him, I'm afraid he'll be defeated. The Bodhi tree was famous in the Wolf's Night Mountain, but not many people had seen him in person. Before, the Bodhi tree had been quiet and didn't show any outstanding performance. But everyone was still very confident in him. The title of the leader of the 9 wolves wasn't something that could be easily obtained. Plus, the evil Moon Wolf's people ranked the Bodhi tree first. This was enough to prove how strong he was. Buzz. At this moment, an azure long sword appeared in the Bodhi tree's hand. A deep sword hum was heard. It was like the cry of a crane, echoing through the entire spiritual space. What a sharp sword essence! Nye Tian narrowed his eyes and his expression changed. This was the first time he had seen the Bodhi seed use a sword. He hadn't expected the sword intent to be so sharp. Bodhi seed was only a swordsman at the 5th sky of sword essence, but his sword essence was even more terrifying than that of Lan Zhuiying at the 1st sky of Oracle. Kill! At this moment, the Bodhi seed roared in a low voice. After which, he took a step forwards as the green lotus blind sword slashed out. A sharp killing intent whistled through the air as the sword's silhouette resembled an iceberg, exploding towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He took out the sky sword and thrust it forward. Bang! The 2 sword shadows collided with each other and a muffled explosion rang out in the air. Instantly, sharp sword intent surged out in all directions, like a huge wave of swords that wanted to tear the heavens and earth apart. The next moment, Nye Tian's eyes trembled. He retreated a few hundred meters before he managed to stabilize himself. However, several bloody wounds had appeared on his body. Furthermore, his wrist had actually split open and was dripping with blood. His sword essence is so domineering. Nye Tian's face darkened. He was shocked. The Bodhi seed's sword essence was sharp and domineering. Moreover, the sword essence was filled with a strong killing intent. The explosive power seemed to be able to destroy everything. Even a swordsman like Nye Tian wouldn't be able to resist his sword intent. Nye Tian, the sword in my hand is called the Green Lotus Blind Sword. The sword skill that I cultivate is called the 9 skills of the blind sword. Under the 9 skills, I can destroy everything. If you only have this kind of sword essence, you won't be able to resist me. Show me your real strength. The Bodhi seed said coldly. Although his eyes were blind, he seemed to be able to see everything. Moreover, he could see more clearly than an ordinary person. Outside his body, streaks of violent sword essence surged and formed a storm of swords. It seemed like the space around him would be torn apart if he moved casually. Although the Bodhi seed spoke arrogantly, he was actually very surprised in his heart. His 9 skills of the sword essence could kill everything. He didn't expect that Nye Tian would dare to fight him head-on. Furthermore, he was only slightly injured. He had to admit that he had underestimated Nye Tian. Good. Nye Tian's eyes darkened and his lips curled into a sinister smile. With a low roar, the sword aura around his body exploded. The 2 saint souls in his body were activated at the same time. His sword principal realm instantly reached the 7th heaven of sword essence realm. Very good. This kind of battle is a little interesting. The Bodhi seed felt the sword essence around Nye Tian. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. His entire person seemed cold and murderous. At this moment, it was as if he was no longer a person, but a sword. A sword that could kill everything in its path. Boom! In the next moment, the linden Bodhi seed slashed out with his sword, and a cyan sword shadow appeared. Endless fierce sword intent rushed madly towards Nye Tian like a colossal beast. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. The sword in the sky pierced the sky like a mad beast. It let out a cold sword cry and then the sword shadow rushed out like a mad dragon. Boom! The 2 sword shadows faced Zhu Hang. In the void, there was an endless roar. Endless dazzling sword radiance surged as if it was going to annihilate the world. The next moment, the figures of Nye Tian and the Bodhi seed retreated at the same time, avoiding the impact of the sword essence. His sword essence is too domineering. Nye Tian stabilized his body. His eyes narrowed slightly and he was secretly surprised. He had activated the double sacred souls and his sword principle had been upgraded to the seventh heaven of sword essence. However, he still could not gain the upper hand when facing the Bodhi seed head-on. At this moment, he even felt a slight pain in his wrist, as if it was about to split open. The Bodhi seed's 9 extinction sword essence was extremely fierce and domineering. It was even more terrifying than those tyrannical bladesmen. Nye Tian had seen many swordsmen who walked the Tao of swiftness and sharpness. It was the first time that he had seen such a domineering swordsman like the Bodhi seed. Nye Tian, is this all you've got? This is too disappointing. The Bodhi seed smiled coldly and roared. Suddenly, the sword essence around his body became even more violent. The dazzling sword radiance shot out tens of thousands of meters, making him look like he was bathing in the sword essence. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly sensed an aura in the Bodhi seed's sword essence. His expression changed, and he said in surprise, "Thunder and lightning." That's right, there was an additional aura of thunder and lightning in the Bodhi seed's sword essence. It was very strange. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, the Bodhi seed's sword essence became even more violent. The power of thunder and lightning struck the void as if it was going to annihilate heaven and earth. Under the stimulation of the power of thunder and lightning, the power of his sword essence became even more terrifying. Nye Tian, can you still block the next sword strike? The Bodhi seed's face was cold. His pair of blind eyes made him look even more evil and cold. 9 extinction blind sword, purple thunder destruction. Then, the Bodhi seed's mouth twitched, and his whole body released a murderous aura. It seemed that the entire spiritual space had become his killing field. Chapter 3578. A Palm Strike. When the crowd saw what was happening in the spiritual space, they couldn't help but gasp. Their expressions changed, and they were shocked. The Bodhi seed's strength was too terrifying. The sword intent he released was incomparably domineering, capable of destroying everything in its path. Would Nye Tian be able to withstand the purple thunder destruction? At this moment, even the Wolf Emperor and 7 kills couldn't help but worry for Nye Tian, their eyes trembling. Sacred heaven-defying sword, heaven and human unity, Yang Qin's sacrifice. At this moment, Nye Tian's sword intent surged wildly and a terrifying murderous aura circulated around him. Above the sword in the sky, a 10,000-meter-long sword aura flowed around the blade. The terrifying sword intent was like a violent demon that seemed to be able to devour the void. Boom! In the next moment, Nye Tian let out a low roar and a terrifying sword shadow whizzed out. The terrifying aura caused the void to tremble. The Bodhi seed sneered and said disdainfully, "You want to fight me with such strength? What a joke!" The strength that Nye Tian had displayed was terrifying, but it was impossible for him to fight against the purple thunder destruction. Is that so? At that moment, Nye Tian let out a cold laugh and charged forward like a bolt of lightning. What is Nye Tian trying to do? His crazy action made the crowd tremble, and they all cried out in surprise. At this moment, Nye Tian was fighting against the Bodhi seed and dashed forward. Wasn't he courting death? The Bodhi seed's heart trembled. He was surprised by Nye Tian's strange action. Could it be that Nye Tian was going to fight him in close combat and compete with his martial body? Boom! At this moment, the sword's shadow directly hit the purple thunder net. The void roared and suddenly, a terrifying force of thunder and lightning rushed out and turned into thousands of tentacles that directly grabbed at Nye Tian. "Nye Tian, it's impossible for you to pass through my purple lightning net." The corners of the Bodhi seed's mouth twitched as he sneered cold. He did not believe that Nye Tian would be able to break through his purple lightning net with a single sword strike. At this moment, he was even more confident that Nye Tian would be killed by the purple thunder sword intent. "Really?" Nye Tian laughed coldly once more. While he was in the air, a violent draconic chi gushed forth from his body. After that, a gigantic scarlet golden dragon appeared. Its gigantic body was incomparably frenzied as it dashed forward. Rumble! In the next instant, the giant dragon stirred the net of lightning, and the two powers of lightning clashed. Terrifying lightning spread for tens of thousands of meters, causing space to violently tremble as if it was about to be torn apart. The Bodhi seed's expression was somber as he frowned. Clearly, he had not expected Nye Tian to be able to unleash the power of Dragon Chi. Bang! At this moment, a violent muffled sound could be heard. The purple lightning net finally couldn't take it anymore and a huge hole was torn in it. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. His figure instantly flew out like a ray of light, charging straight at the Bodhi seed. Courting death. The Bodhi seed's face darkened as he growled cold. The sword intent and killing intent around him were released crazily as he thrust out his palm in an attempt to kill Nye Tian. He had not expected that Nye Tian would be able to break through the purple lightning net, but he did not panic. He did not believe that Nye Tian's martial body would be stronger than his. Although the Bodhi seed was only a fifth-layer heavenly rhythm holy disciple, his martial body was stronger than many low-ranked holy masters. Nye Tian was only at the third-layer heavenly rhythm holy disciple. Charging straight at him was simply courting death. Bodhi seed, this round is finally over. Nye Tian smiled faintly as a strange light flickered in his eyes. At this moment, the Bodhi seed suddenly sensed a terrifying eye power circulating within Nye Tian's body. It was actually stimulating Nye Tian's martial body to become stronger. How is this possible? The sudden change made the Bodhi seed's face tremble as he screamed in shock. However, at that moment, Nye Tian's eyes had already taken on a bizarre shade of black. As he thrust his palm out, palm shadows whizzed out like gusts of wind, carrying an incomparably violent aura. Bang! In the next moment, the two palms collided and a muffled sound was heard as one of the palms shattered. Bang! Then, another muffled sound was heard as the Bodhi seed's body shook violently before it shattered and disappeared. Dead, dead. The scene in front of them caused everyone's eyes to tremble violently. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They could not believe that Nye Tian had killed the Bodhi seed with a single palm strike. Originally, everyone thought that the battle had only just begun. They never thought that it would end like this. Countless people stood rooted to the ground, unable to react for a long time. Nye Tian's martial body is too terrifying. After a long time, everyone came back to their senses and looked at Nye Tian with shock and astonishment. No one had expected Nye Tian to be able to pass through the Bodhi seed's lightning net. And the strength of Nye Tian's martial body was even more unimaginable. With the Bodhi seed's strength, ordinary third-level heavenly charm cultivators would not even be able to get close to him. But Nye Tian was able to directly kill the Bodhi seed with his martial body. That was too terrifying. Nye Tian's gaze swept across the crowd and he faintly smiled. With a thought, his divine soul returned. What kind of power did you use? At this moment, the Bodhi seed reacted and asked coldly with a murderous expression. He could not understand how Nye Tian could instantly increase his martial body to such a terrifying level. Eye power. Nye Tian smiled faintly and answered frankly. He knew that the Bodhi seed's martial body was very strong when he fought with him, so he used his godly demon body when he got close to the Bodhi seed. Under normal circumstances, Nye Tian's martial body was no match for the Bodhi seed. He did not want to fight with the Bodhi seed for too long because he was focused on the next battle with Chi Sha. Therefore, he used his godly demon body to catch the Bodhi seed off guard and kill him with a palm strike. You're a cultivator with other pupils. The Bodhi seed's face was gloomy and a faint sword intent surged around his body. He was obviously very angry. He was really unwilling to lose this battle. He had not even used his true strength when he was defeated by Nie Tian just like that. He did not even use the Bodhi bead. However, he was also lucky. After all, this was a battle in the divine soul space. If it had been a real battle, he would have been dead. You can say that. Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not deny it. His demon eye and heavenly punishment spirit rebel came from the godly demon embryo, so he was not sure if he was a cultivator with other pupils. The Bodhi seed's face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water, but he did not say anything. He had lost this battle. As such, Nie Tian had won. Next, he would face his last opponent, Qi Sha. Chapter 3579. Chapter 3574. Chapter 3574. A brutal massacre. The way Qi Sha looked at Nie Tian was cold, murderous, and strange. There was even a hint of scheming in his eyes, which made Nie Tian feel somewhat uneasy. When 7 kills fought against Enliojie, Nie Tian had already found out that 7 kills had some kind of connection with the spiritual space. In the spiritual space, 7 kills power would be greatly improved. Somehow, Nie Tian felt that there must be something hidden in the spiritual space. Come on. At this time, 7 kills smiled coldly, and then his spiritual soul appeared in the spiritual space. Nie Tian nodded slightly. With a thought, he sent his soul into his soul space to confront Qi Sha. Nie Tian, you really didn't disappoint me. 7 Kill's eyes flashed with coldness. Maybe it was because his murderous intent was too strong. His eyes were like sharp blades that could directly kill people. Then I hope that you won't disappoint me too. Nie Tian smiled lightly and responded in a deep voice. His face was as calm as a deep pond. I will. 7 Kills sneered and then took a step forward. Suddenly, an enormous murderous intent was released from his body. Like an invisible giant hand, it instantly covered the entire spiritual space. It really is a ward. Nie Tian's eyes darkened and he exclaimed in his heart. When 7 Kills fought against Enliojie, Enliojie released the power of the 5 wolves, but was killed by 7 Kills in a strange way. At that time, Nie Tian guessed that 7 Kills must have opened some kind of ward in the spiritual space. Now, facing 7 Kills, he sensed the murderous intent in the spiritual space and sensed the power of the ward, which made him sure that 7 Kills had indeed opened the ward. Nie Tian, facing the extreme kill ward, how long can you last? 7 Kills smiled coldly and asked directly. I can last until I defeat you. Nie Tian's lips twitched and he responded in a deep voice. At this moment, he felt that 7 Kills had become an abyss of murderous intent. His every move would affect the surrounding murderous intent. Really? Qi Sha laughed coldly. Then, he moved and stepped out. Instantly, an extremely sharp killer's intent condensed into a blade that attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. His figure instantly retreated a few meters to the side, avoiding the extreme killing blade. In the blink of an eye, he saw the extreme killing blade brush past his chest. The sharp aura left a horrifying wound on his body. Nie Tian steadied himself and his heart couldn't help but tremble. Fortunately, he had dodged in time. Otherwise, if he had been hit by the extreme killing edge, his heart would definitely have been pierced. At that moment, he could also sense that the killing intent in his surroundings was exerting an enormous pressure on him, causing his speed to slow down significantly. Fortunately, his perception was far stronger than that of the average warrior. Coupled with the Eternal Night Demon Fox's presence, he was able to predict Qi Sha's attack in time. Very good. Qi Sha's eyes narrowed slightly and his lips twitched. He said, Nie Tian, your strength has exceeded my expectations. But that's nothing. It just makes this battle more interesting. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire spiritual space was filled with a bone-chilling killer's intent. Is that so? Nye Tian faintly smiled and said, in the spiritual space you are indeed strong. But such strength is not enough to kill me. You are very confident, but this level of confidence will not save you. Qi Sha sneered and slightly raised his hand. Then, several surges of killer's intent gushed out, and in the air, several blades of extreme killing appeared. Like arrows released from a bow, they whizzed towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He could clearly hear the ear-piercing screeches of the blades of extreme killing, like the knell of the god of death. In the next second, a pair of astral wings appeared on Nye Tian's back. His silhouette stepped back in the air, barely dodging the blades of extreme killing. However, a few more wounds appeared on his body. His entire body was now covered in blood. These blades of extreme killing were far too terrifying. Being hit directly by one of them would be fatal. Nye Tian, your perception is much stronger than others. But how long can you last? Qi Sha grinned coldly. His hands moved in the air and countless blades of extreme killing appeared, piercing through the air. Retch, retch, retch. In the air, the sound of flesh being sliced could be heard. Bloody wounds appeared on Nye Tian's body, turning him into a man of blood. This! The crowd's eyes trembled as they gasped. They were astonished by the horrifying scene before them. In front of Qi Sha, Nye Tian couldn't even fight back. The fight in the spirit space was simply a massacre. Nye Tian, do you still have the strength to fight back? In his spiritual space, Qi Sha growled coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. I'm not dead yet. You haven't won this battle yet. Nye Tian said with a cold smile. Although he appeared to be covered in blood, as if he was heavily injured, in reality, he wasn't seriously injured. At least, his injuries weren't fatal. You're courageous, but you can't win this battle. Qi Sha grinned coldly and raised his hands. Instantly, a terrifying aura appeared in the air and enveloped Nye Tian. Nye Tian suddenly felt the killer's intent and his face froze. However, before he could react, his entire body was wrapped up by the killer's intent and he couldn't move. Oh no! Nye Tian frowned and his face changed color. He screamed in his heart. Qi Sha had set up a barrier in his spiritual space and gained the absolute advantage. Inside this space, he was the absolute ruler. Nye Tian, accept your death. 7 kills sneered. Then, a terrifying killing intent surged out of his body. Next, a terrifying blade of extreme killing appeared in the void and whizzed towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian felt the killer's intent and his pupils shrunk. He was surrounded by the killer's intent and couldn't move at all. He could only wait to be killed by the blade. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian was in a hopeless situation. Inside the array of extreme killing, nobody is my opponent. 7 kills sneered arrogantly. He seemed to have gone mad. It was as if he could already see the scene of Nye Tian being killed. Nye Tian is done for. At the same time, everyone's eyes were shaking and their hearts were shaking. What was happening inside the spiritual space made everyone believe that Nye Tian was dead for sure. In this hopeless situation, Nye Tian was dead for sure. However, what happened in the next moment was beyond everyone's expectations. Wretch! Nye Tian's expression flickered slightly as a stream of dark eye power surged out of his body and condensed into a sharp blade in the air, whistling through the air. Chapter 3580. Monstrous killing intent, huh? The sudden turn of events made Qi Sha's eyes widen in shock. At this moment, he actually felt a terrifying pressure. However, he reacted very quickly. His pupils suddenly contracted, and a tremendous wave of eye power surged out, forming an extreme killing vortex in front of him, and directly devoured the eye power blade that was coming at him. Bang! At the same time, a muffled sound rang out. Nye Tian forcefully broke free from the killing intent. Damn it! 7 Kills frowned and growled coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, as if he wanted to eat someone alive. He had never imagined that Nye Tian would still have the strength to fight back at this moment. However, the eye power that Nye Tian had just released actually made him feel extremely threatened. If he had reacted any slower, it was very likely that he would have been killed on the spot. Qi Sha, your strength is only SOSO. Nye Tian smiled faintly. His body shook and the bloodstains on his body were washed away. Sword intent surged around him, extremely sharp. You still dare to be arrogant in the face of death? Qi Sha roared in a low voice. After that, he moved. The killing intent around him condensed into a storm that was incomparably sharp, stirring up the space around him. It was as if the heaven and earth were about to be destroyed. Extreme killing chi was the extreme of killing. That kind of violent and overbearing aura was a great deterrent to martial artists. However, 7 Kills' control and understanding of this power was far from enough. Otherwise, the killing intent he released would have been enough to kill Nye Tian. Come. Nye Tian's eyes darkened and he no longer had any scruples. The power in his eyes was released in a frenzy, attacking the martial body and activating the celestial demon body. Very good. 7 Kills looked at Nye Tian and felt the terrifying aura he was releasing. He smiled coldly and said, "This is the Nye Tian I know. Let us have a good fight." Kill. In the next moment, Qi Sha growled and the storm of killing intent around him moved. A terrifying aura rolled out and destroyed everything in its path. Nye Tian frowned when he felt the strangling power coming towards him. However, there was no fear on his face, only a strong desire to fight. 9 Limits of the Starry Sky, Sun Annihilation. With a roar, the sky sword streaked across the sky, causing the void to tremble. In an instant, a terrifying sword shadow shot out. The powerful pressure caused the surrounding void to sink. Boom! In the next moment, the sword shadow collided with the storm of killing intent. A terrifying rumbling sound rang out in the air. In an instant, a terrifying violent force crazily rampaged in all directions. The heavens and earth were in chaos, as if doomsday had arrived. What a terrifying pair! The crowd's eyes quivered intensely, looking at the scene in the spiritual space in disbelief. The combat strength of Nye Tian and Qi Sha was too terrifying. It was hard to believe that the battle in front of them was between two heavenly charm saint disciples. Whether it was Nye Tian or Qi Sha, their combat strength was far beyond that of ordinary heavenly mandate saint masters. Especially Nye Tian, when he activated the celestial demon body and the 2 saint souls at the same time, he was probably strong enough to threaten some high-level heavenly mandate warriors. Bang! At this time, a muffled sound came from the spiritual space. Qi Sha's figure flew backward, leaving a bloody trail in the air. Nye Tian's figure also retreated hundreds of meters, but he stood steadily, with a faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. How is this possible? Qi Sha steadied himself. His eyes suddenly narrowed, and he cried out in shock. He couldn't believe that Nye Tian could hurt him in a head-on fight in the supreme kill boundary. Qi Sha, how long can you last in your current state? Nye Tianling sneered and then moved. The sky sword drew a dazzling sword light in the air, and a sword shadow slashed out like a mountain, blasting toward Qi Sha. At this time, Nye Tian had activated the celestial demon body and the 2 saint souls at the same time, which had forced his martial body to the limit. His current strength was very strong, but he couldn't maintain it for long. Therefore, he had to cut the Gordian knot and quickly end the battle in front of him. Damn it! Qi Sha felt the oppressive force coming toward him. He growled and slapped out with his palm. The extreme kill storm appeared, hitting the sword shadow, but it only blocked it for a moment. The sword shadow was extremely violent, and the power contained in it was very terrifying. It directly pressed toward him. Bang! With a muffled sound, Qi Sha flew backward again, and a bloody mark appeared in the air. How did Nye Tian become so strong? Everyone's eyes trembled, looking at the spiritual space in disbelief. They didn't understand how Nye Tian, who was completely suppressed just now, could suddenly become so terrifying. Ah! Qi Sha steadied his body, and his whole body was already dripping with blood. He roared like a crazy beast, and his eyes suddenly became very strange, like an abyss of killing intent, releasing a terrifying murderous aura. Extreme kill demon eyes. Nye Tian's eyes slightly froze and his expression changed, and he couldn't help but frown. Qi Sha used the extreme kill demon eyes again. It was obvious that he was going to fight to the death. Boom! At this time, the murderous intent around Qi Sha was extremely violent. His whole body was like a murderous storm, and his sharp qi strangled everything. Ghost Emperor, where is the boundary eye of the extreme kill formation? Nye Tian felt the Qi Sha's qi, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he asked in a deep voice. At this moment, Qi Sha's Qi Sha was too terrifying. Even Nye Tian, who was in the state of the extreme kill formation, felt a strong threat. With his current state, there was no way he could resist Qi Sha's attack, unless he used the Earth Destruction Star Soul. However, if he used the Earth Destruction Star Soul on Qi Sha, it would be a bit of a waste. If he could find the boundary eye of the extreme kill formation, it would be much easier to break the formation, and then defeat Qi Sha. If you want to break the extreme kill formation, you have to kill him. The Ghost Emperor's eyes trembled slightly, and he replied in a low voice. Huh! Nye Tian frowned, and his expression changed. He immediately realized that Qi Sha was the boundary eye of the extreme kill formation. If he wanted to break the extreme kill formation, he had to kill Qi Sha. It seemed that Nye Tian had underestimated the extreme kill formation. Could it be that I have to use the Earth Destruction Star Soul? Nye Tian's eyes darkened slightly. He could feel that the murderous aura on Qi Sha's body was even more terrifying, and his murderous intent was monstrous, blasting everything. It seemed that outside of Qi Sha's body, there was an extreme kill demon shadow. He frowned, and with a thought, he was ready to use the Earth Destruction Star Soul. If Qi Sha attacked again, he would use the Earth Destruction Star Soul. The extreme battle was about to start. Qi Sha, enough. At this time, a low voice suddenly sounded, and then a figure appeared in the sky. Your Highness Wolf. The Wolf Emperor frowned, looked at the person, and exclaimed. Chapter 3581. The Emperor of the Underworld appears. Lai Yin Jiufeng. Nye Tian's pupils shrank when he heard the voice. He looked at the newcomer. He hadn't expected Lai Yin Jiufeng to appear at this time. Jiufeng. 7 Kills was stunned as well. He looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng with trembling eyes. He was clearly very surprised. Everyone was stunned by Lai Yin Jiufeng's sudden appearance. 7 kills, this battle ends here. Lai Yin Jiufeng's eyes flashed with a strange light as he said coldly. Ends here? 7 kills' eyes darkened. He asked coldly, what do you mean? You've lost. Nye Tian is the leader of Wolf Knight. Lai Yin Jiufeng's eyes darkened slightly. He said casually, but his words were filled with undefiable dominance. You want me to admit defeat? 7 kills' pupils shrank as he growled. Killing intent surged madly from his body like sharp blades. The surrounding space was filled with sharp howls. Nye Tian was stunned when he heard Lai Yin Jiufeng's words. He hadn't thought that Lai Yin Jiufeng would come here to ask 7 kills to admit defeat. Yes. Lai Yin Jiufeng looked at 7 kills and nodded. He appeared very calm. Impossible, Qi Sha growled. Like an enraged beast, his entire body was filled with a terrifying murderous intent. He could lose to Nye Tian, but he could not admit defeat. Everyone else was stunned as well. They looked strangely at Lai Yin Jiufeng. The battle between Nye Tian and 7 kills was the final battle of the Wolf Knight struggle. Lai Yin Jiufeng wanted 7 kills to admit defeat? This was a joke. This is an order from the Emperor of the Underworld. Lien Jiufeng ignored everyone else. His eyes were cold and dark as he stared at 7 Kills. 7 Kills' pupils shrank. He was very shocked. The Emperor of the Underworld had ordered him to admit defeat. Was the Emperor of the Underworld going to give the leader of Wolf Knight to Nietian? 7 Kills, the battle is over. It ends here, Lien Jiufeng said indifferently when he saw the stunned 7 Kills. No! But at this moment, Qi Sha suddenly roared and his killing intent burst out. The killing intent covered the entire spiritual space. That kind of killing intent was extremely terrifying. Nietian frowned. He didn't expect Qi Sha to disobey the Emperor of the Underworld's order just to kill him. 7 Kills, how dare you defy the Emperor of the Underworld? Lien Jiufeng growled as his eyes trembled. So what if I disobey? I must defeat Nietian. 7 Kills roared. The murderous aura around him was like a storm that was piercing to the ears. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to defeat Nietian. Even if he had to disobey the Underworld Emperor, he would not hesitate to do so. Have you lost your mind? Lien Jiufeng growled. His entire body surged with the power of golden flames as his eyes turned murderous. Your Highness Lang Zi. The Wolf Emperor was stunned by the scene before him. He finally reacted and turned to look at Lien Jiufeng in panic. He seemed a little afraid of Lien Jiufeng. 7 Kills has lost this battle. Remove your spiritual space. Lien Jiufeng abruptly turned to look at the Wolf Emperor and said coldly. This. The Wolf Emperor was stunned and completely panicked. I said remove your spiritual space. Lien Jiufeng's eyes were extremely dark as he roared. He was clearly furious. Yes. The Wolf Emperor's eyes trembled. He was actually very afraid of Lien Jiufeng. He agreed and removed his spiritual space immediately. Nietian and 7 Kills' divine souls immediately returned to their martial bodies. But at this time, 7 Kills seemed to have gone mad. His killing intent surged wildly in the air like a tidal wave. It was extremely terrifying and seemed to want to devour everything. Stop, 7 Kills. Lien Jiufeng frowned and roared. Even after removing his spiritual space, 7 Kills still did not stop. My spiritual space is gone. That's exactly what I wanted. 7 Kills' eyes were bloodshot as killing intent surged from his body. He stared at Nietian and said, Nietian, let's fight for real. Nietian's eyebrows furrowed. He could tell that even Qi Sha seemed to be affected by his spiritual space, and had lost control of his soul awareness. Boom. At that moment, 7 Kills released his killing intent, forming ripples of killing intent in the air. The extreme killing boundary appeared. What a terrifying killing intent! Everyone's eyes trembled as they felt the terrifying killing intent surging in the air. They were shocked to the extreme. Before, they had only seen Qi Sha's murderous intent in their spirit space, but now they could clearly feel it. The murderous intent in the air was as cold as ice, which could penetrate into their bones. No one had expected 7 Kills' killing intent to be so terrifying. Nietian looked at 7 Kills and frowned. The current situation was even worse than before. Just now, in the spiritual space, even if the two of them used their ultimate moves, it would only determine the winner. But now, under normal circumstances, after using their ultimate moves, it would be a matter of life and death. The next moment, Nietian's eyes darkened as he thought to himself, there's no other way. I can only fight with brute force. Now that 7 Kills was almost out of control, he could only use the devastating Star Soul. With 7 Kills' strength, even in the extreme kill formation, it was impossible for him to fight against the devastating Star Soul. Nietian felt the power of the devastating Star Soul and was shocked. When the devastating Star Soul was released in an instant, it was probably enough to kill a Saint Master at the peak of the Heavenly Mandate realm. Nietian, go to hell. At this moment, 7 Kills' eyes were filled with killing intent. he growled, and the killing intent around him reached its peak. He took a step forward and struck with his palm. Suddenly, the terrifying killing intent rolled out and rushed toward Nietion. Nietion's eyes narrowed. He suddenly felt the fierce aura coming toward him, as if there were countless sharp blades tearing through the void. He moved his mind, and the devastating star soul sensed it. Star runes surged crazily. Stop! However, at the critical moment, a deep voice suddenly rang out. Boom! Immediately, a huge force appeared in the void, pressing down on the world as if it was about to collapse. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly, and then the star runes around him retracted, and the devastating star soul returned in time. At the same time, the huge force fell, but like a spring breeze and rain, it easily dissolved 7 kills' attack. Then, a figure in black appeared in the sky, like a dark vortex, standing coldly in the sky. Emperor of the Underworld! Nietion suddenly looked up at the blurry figure. Although he could not see the face clearly, he was very sure that the person who came was the Emperor of the Underworld. Emperor of the Underworld! 7 Kill's eyes trembled, and his face suddenly changed. He screamed and then knelt down. Chapter 3582. Chapter 3577. The Path of the Heavenly Wolf, Emperor of the Underworld. The Wolf Emperor knelt. Everyone else in the demonic moon wolf cried out in unison and knelt down. This scene caused Nietion's eyes to widen, and he exclaimed with a confused expression, He could understand why 7 Kills would kneel to the Wolf Emperor. After all, 7 Kills and the Wolf Emperor had a superior relationship. Moreover, 7 Kills had publicly acknowledged the Emperor of the Underworld. That was why he was kneeling. But why would the Wolf Emperor, a supreme expert of the demonic moonwolf, kneel to the Emperor of the Underworld? Wasn't the Wolf Emperor the highest existence in the demonic moonwolf? Nietion was confused. He looked at the Emperor of the Underworld with a strange expression. But in the next moment, something even more shocking happened. He scanned the Wolf Emperor with his divine sense and found that the latter's strength had reached level 9 of heavenly righteousness. Level 9 of heavenly righteousness was the peak of the holy Monarch realm. He was only one step away from the paramount sage realm. How is this possible? Nietion roared in his heart. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had learned from Lian Jiufeng and 7 Kills that the Emperor of the Underworld had become a sage in the same realm as him, less than a month. In other words, the Emperor of the Underworld had only become a sage in a month or two. In a month or two, he had gone from a low-level holy disciple to a peak holy monarch at level 9 of heavenly righteousness. This speed could no longer be described as monstrous. It was indescribably monstrous. Even someone as monstrous as Nietion was only at level 3 of heavenly charm. He had relied on various fortuitous encounters and the power of the heart of the sky. Then how did the Emperor of the Underworld rise from a low-level holy disciple to a peak holy monarch in such a short time? What happened to the Emperor of the Underworld? What was the Emperor of the Underworld right now? Why did the mighty Wolf Emperor have to kneel before him? One question after another haunted Nietion's mind, making him feel as if his thoughts were a tangled mess. 7 Kills, this battle is over. The duel between you and Nietion is not now. At this moment, the Emperor of the Underworld spoke up. His entire body was hidden in the darkness, and he seemed to be looking at Qi Sha as he said calmly. His voice was very calm, but every word he uttered was filled with an oppressive aura that made one shudder. Yes, 7 Kills nodded, but he was already drenched in cold sweat. Wolf Emperor Nietion is the winner of this battle. He is the leader of the Wolf Knight, the Emperor of the Underworld said to the Wolf Emperor, ignoring Qi Sha. Yes. The Wolf Emperor hurriedly nodded. He remained kneeling, not even daring to raise his head. The others looked at the Emperor of the Underworld from afar. They felt strange, but they didn't dare to make a sound. They didn't even dare to breathe heavily. Just by standing there, the Emperor of the Underworld exuded a great pressure. It was as if he was a mountain that everyone else could only look up to from the foot of the mountain. Nye Tian, after you become the leader of the Wolf Knight, you will walk the path of the Heavenly Wolf. I will wait for you at the end of the path of the Heavenly Wolf, the Emperor of the Underworld said indifferently as he focused his gaze on Nye Tian. All right. Nye Tian nodded slightly. He maintained a calm expression on his face. 7 kills, Jiufeng, let's go. The Emperor of the Underworld nodded and left. Lian Jiufeng and Qi Sha exchanged a glance and hurriedly followed. The Wolf Emperor and the others only stood up a long time after the 3 emperors of the underworld had disappeared. Everyone let out a sigh of relief, but their faces were still filled with unconcealable shock. Originally, everyone thought that the Wolf Emperor was the person with the highest status in the celestial Moonwolf. However, the Emperor of the Underworld's sudden appearance had overturned their beliefs. It was as if the Emperor of the Underworld was the strongest person in the celestial Moonwolf. The Wolf Emperor sucked in a deep breath and calmed down. Then, he didn't say much and simply announced the end of the Wolf Knight struggle. Then, he fixed his gaze on Nye Tian and the others and said, "Everyone, please come with me." Nye Tian and the other lords of the Blue Wolves nodded slightly and left with the Wolf Emperor. A while later, Nye Tian and the others appeared in the Great Hall of the Heavenly Wolf Palace in Wolf Knight City. The Wolf Emperor sat at the head of the hall while Nye Tian, Lan Zhuiying, and the others stood on either side of him. Congratulations on becoming the Lords of the Blue Wolves for the Wolf Knight struggle. The Wolf Emperor had completely calmed down by now. A faint smile hung on his face as he swept his gaze across Nye Tian and the others. He said very politely, "Lord Wolf Emperor is too polite." Nye Tian responded on behalf of the Lords of the Blue Wolves with a smile. He was the leader of the Wolf Knight struggle, the leader of the 9 Lords of the Blue Wolf. Therefore, he was the one with the most authority among everyone present. Following that, the Wolf Emperor chatted casually with Nye Tian and the others for a while before he officially entered the topic. "Everyone, do you know about the Sirius Path?" The Sirius Path? Yin Liujie spoke at this time. He was surprised and asked, "Could it be the legendary forbidden area of the evil Moonwolf?" "Yes." The Wolf Emperor's eyes slightly narrowed as he looked at Yin Liujie in surprise. He faintly smiled and said, "I didn't expect little friend Yin to know about the Sirius Path." "Lord Wolf Emperor, you must be joking. I only heard about it from Master and only know about the existence of the Sirius Path. As for what's inside, I have no idea." Yin Liujie bowed slightly, looking very cautious. The Wolf Emperor nodded and said with a smile, "The Sirius Path is indeed the forbidden area of the evil Moonwolf. Under normal circumstances, the Sirius Path is only open to the previous generations of Wolf Emperors. This time, in order to welcome the return of His Majesty the Netherworld Emperor, the evil Moonwolf specially chose 9 Azure Wolf Lords and allowed you to enter the Sirius Path." "Really?" Yin Liujie's eyes trembled, a trace of unconcealable excitement on his face. "Of course." The Wolf Emperor smiled faintly. The others all looked excited at this time. They were obviously looking forward to entering the Sirius Path. In the Night Wolf Mountain, there was a legend about the Sirius Path. Rumor has it that the Sirius Path has 9 kinds of ancient forbidden forces, which were very terrifying. If one could obtain any one of these 9 kinds of ancient forbidden forces, it would be enough for a cultivator to set foot on the peak of martial arts. Nye Tian's reaction at this time was very calm. He didn't know what the Sirius Path was, nor did he care. What he cared about was that he wanted to walk to the end of the Sirius Path and see the Netherworld Emperor. "Lord Wolf Emperor, rumor has it that the Sirius Path has 9 kinds of ancient forbidden forces. I wonder if it's true?" At this time, Yin Liujie couldn't help but ask cautiously with trembling eyes. When the others heard his words, their eyes blazed as they stared at the Wolf Emperor, waiting for the latter's answer. Chapter 3583. Chapter 3578. Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars. Everyone exclaimed in surprise when they heard the Wolf King's words. So the 9 ancient forbidden powers of the path of the Heavenly Wolf were called Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars. Lord Wolf King, what kind of power is Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars? Liujia's eyes were burning with excitement as he asked. Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars is a power left behind in the ancient times. Legend has it that it was formed by the bloodline power of 9 peak divine ancestors in the early ancient times, the Wolf King said with a faint smile. The bloodline power of a peak divine ancestor. Everyone was shocked. The heavenly martial divine ancestor was at the peak of the exalted saint realm. It was hard to imagine how strong a peak divine ancestor was. Even if the bloodline power was weakened, it was still very terrifying. This kind of power could indeed be called an ancient forbidden power. Lord Wolf King, can we get the Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars? Lianggui couldn't help asking. Since the path of the Heavenly Wolf is open to you, you can take away any power you get from it, the Wolf King said with a calm smile, but there was a strange look in his eyes. Nie Tian keenly captured the Wolf Emperor's expression, and his heart sank as he had a bad premonition. Since the Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars was an ancient forbidden power, how could the evil moon Heavenly Wolf's people let Nie Tian and the others take it away so easily? Nie Tian vaguely sensed the aura of a scheme. However, the Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars is a very powerful power. Ordinary cultivators can't fuse with it. It won't be easy for you to get the Heavenly Wolf's recognition, the Wolf King said with a faint smile. Everyone nodded, but their eyes were still blazing. Clearly, they were very confident in themselves. Lord Wolf King, can you tell us what the Heavenly Wolf's 9 Stars are? At this moment, Bodhi Seed, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. He looked calm, but there was a trace of evil aura on his face. Of course. The Wolf Monarch smiled faintly and nodded. The Heavenly Wolf 9 celestial stars are 9 different kinds of energy. They are called Heaven Celestial, Earth Celestial, Human Celestial, Yang Celestial, Moon Celestial, Star Celestial, Profound Celestial, Yellow Celestial, and Emperor Celestial. Upon hearing the Wolf Emperor's words, everyone's eyes began to tremble again, and their faces were filled with unconcealable excitement. However, at that moment, the Bodhi Seed frowned and continued to ask, Lord Wolf Emperor, I wish to know, which of the 9 celestial wolves is the strongest? The Heavenly Wolf's 9 moons are all different, and their emphasis is also different. Their strength is almost the same. The Wolf King looked at the Bodhi Seed and knew what the latter was thinking. He smiled faintly and said, however, there is one Langqin who is far stronger than the other 8. He is called Sovereign Langqin. Which one? Everyone's eyes trembled as they cried out in unison. Emperor Qin. The corner of the Wolf Emperor's mouth twitched. He glanced at the 8 people and said with a smile, regardless of who among the 8 of you, as long as you can fuse with the Monster Emperor Star, your strength will break through at least 3 stages. Moreover, your martial arts foundation will also improve because of the Monster Emperor Star. In the future, your martial arts achievements will easily reach the level of the Sky Martial Divine Ancestor. Divine Ancestor. Everyone's eyes were burning with eagerness and admiration. All the martial artists in the All-Heaven Sacred World, regardless of whether they were in a low-grade sacred world or a high-grade sacred world, desired to step into the Divine Ancestor realm. However, the Sky Martial Divine Ancestor realm was the strongest realm of the Supreme Sacred World. In the entire All-Heaven Sacred World, the number of martial artists in the Divine Ancestor realm was 1 in a billion. It was already very good for ordinary martial artists to step into the Sage realm. Even those geniuses could not break through the shackles of the Sage Tianyi realm. After the Sage Tianyi realm was the King Sage realm, and the Heavenly Tribulation realm had to bear the power of the Heavenly Tribulation. Many cultivators had been killed by the power of heavenly tribulation when they were trying to break through to the heavenly tribulation realm because they hadn't made enough preparations. The sky martial divine ancestor realm was the dream of every martial artist. Everyone wanted to step into it. However, it was a pity that only the most monstrous geniuses could break through the sky martial divine ancestor realm. The power of the monster emperor star could not only improve the martial artist's strength instantly, but it could also improve the martial arts foundation. Such power was too tempting. It turns out that the power of the monster emperor star is so powerful. No wonder teacher wants it. Liujie glanced at the wolf emperor and the others and thought to himself. He participated in the wolf knight battle for the monster emperor star. The person who really wanted the monster emperor star was his teacher, Huang Lang. However, after hearing what the wolf emperor said, Liujie's mind had changed. If he could get the monster emperor star, he would, of course, integrate it himself. He would never give it to Huang Lang. Moreover, he felt that Huang Lang did not even know what kind of power the monster emperor star was. Among the 9 stars, the monster emperor star is the strongest. It also has the highest requirements for martial artists. If you want to get the monster emperor star, you have to know your own strength. The wolf emperor's lips curled into a faint smile as he looked at the young cultivators before him and said in a deep voice, "Lord Wolf Emperor, how much weaker are the other wolf emperors compared to the monster emperor stars?" Ming Feng looked at the wolf emperor and suddenly asked. The other wolf emperors, although weaker than the monster emperor stars, are still very powerful. They can also improve your strength in an instant and also improve your martial arts foundation. The wolf emperor nodded and said faintly, appearing very patient. Everyone nodded one after another, and their expressions became even more enthusiastic. Obtaining one of the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars would be a great fortune. Lord Wolf Emperor, since the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars is so powerful, why didn't the Wolf Emperor fuse with the demonic moon Heavenly Wolf? Nie Tian suddenly said with a faint smile and looked at the Wolf Emperor with a burning gaze. The Wolf Emperor frowned and his face slightly stiffened. He obviously did not expect that Nie Tian would suddenly ask him such a question. The Heavenly Wolf 9 stars can only be found by chance. The Wolf Emperor calmed down a little and said, "Although this Emperor knows that the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars is in the Heavenly Wolf Road, I have never found it." "What do you mean?" The others couldn't help but be stunned when they heard the Wolf Emperor's words. If they entered the Heavenly Wolf Road and couldn't even find the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars, then what was the point of entering? The Heavenly Wolf 9 stars is indeed in the Heavenly Wolf Road, but whether you can appear or not depends on whether you meet the conditions of the 9 stars. The Wolf Emperor frowned and said, "If your talent is good enough, the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars will automatically appear." This. Everyone frowned and was stunned for a moment, not knowing what to say. The powerful Wolf Emperor had entered the Heavenly Wolf Road before, but no one had seen the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars. Those who could become the Wolf Emperor were naturally not weak in talent and strength. Even they couldn't draw out the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars. Could they do it? At this moment, everyone's expression instantly changed from excitement to unsightly. It was as if the Wolf Emperor had drawn a cake for them that could only be seen, not eaten. Chapter 3584. Chapter 3579. Chapter 3579 Conspiracy Aura Underworld Emperor Help Us? When everyone heard the Wolf Emperor's words, their originally dull eyes instantly trembled. After they reacted, they cried out in astonishment. The Wolf Emperor said that the Underworld Emperor would help them draw out the Heavenly Wolf Jiuchen. This sounded a bit unreal and unbelievable. None of the 8 people present were evil Moon Wolf's people. If the Underworld Emperor could really draw out the Heavenly Wolf Jiuchen, why would he let them fuse? Everyone had seen the Underworld Emperor, that mysterious dark shadow, no matter how they looked at it. He did not look like someone who was willing to help others. "Yes, the Underworld Emperor will help you." The Wolf Emperor looked at everyone and nodded. Why? Nye Tian was very calm at this time. He looked at the Wolf Emperor and asked, "You are the Green Wolf Lords chosen for the Wolf Knight competition. Is it strange that the Underworld Emperor will help you?" The Wolf Emperor frowned. He looked at Nye Tian with an unconcealable hostility. He did not like Nye Tian's question. "Is that all?" The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. He laughed and did not say anything else. The eyes of the others flickered. Some were worried, some were excited. The 8 of them were all martial Dao geniuses. None of them were stupid. In the world of martial Dao, the strong were always respected. The Underworld Emperor was an expert, but he would not help Nye Tian and the others for no reason. The Underworld Emperor's generous action made the ominous premonition in Nye Tian's heart increase. "Lord Wolf Emperor, if we fuse with Wolfchin, do we have to join Evil Moon Wolf?" At this time, Su Kuanga asked with a gloomy gaze. "No need." The Wolf Emperor smiled faintly and said, "This Emperor said, since you entered the Heavenly Wolf Road, anything you obtain inside belongs to you, you can take it away unconditionally." "Thank you, Lord Wolf Emperor." Su Kuanga nodded slightly and thanked him, but his expression was obviously not good. The more tempting something was, the bigger the trap behind it. Evil Moon Wolf seemed to have dug a trap for Nye Tian and the others, waiting for them to jump in. More importantly, Nye Tian and the others seemed to have no other choice. Even though they knew it was a trap, they still had to jump in. "All right, everyone, you can all take a rest in the Heavenly Wolf Palace. In 3 days, I will personally lead you all into the Heavenly Wolf Path," said the Wolf Emperor. He stood up and gestured for everyone to return. However, they could only stay in the serious manner and could not leave. Then, under the guidance of the Sky Wolf Guards, Nye Tian and the others arrived at their own resting areas. In the room, Nye Tian sat quietly, thinking about something. Everything that had happened over the past few days was just too strange. The Netherworld Emperor, 7 kills, and Lai Yen Jiufeng in particular seemed to be completely different from before. He was anxious to know exactly what had happened to the 3 of them. "Nye Tian, I'm afraid that the Wolf Emperor has some ulterior motives for letting you guys enter the Celestial Wolf's path." At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded. "I know." Nye Tian smiled bitterly and said, "I've already come this far. Even if the Sea of Purgatory is right in front of me, I have no choice but to continue." The Ghost Emperor nodded and said no more. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Nye Tian walked out of the room. His aura was much sharper than before. He looked even stronger and sharper than before. He had already made ample preparations for the Celestial Wolf Path. He would face whatever came next calmly. A while later, Nye Tian and the others arrived at the Great Hall. The Wolf Emperor was already waiting for them. "Everyone, let's go." The Wolf Emperor did not waste any time. He immediately led Nye Tian and the others out of the Great Hall. After that, they left the serious manor and soon arrived at a remote valley in Wolf's Night Mountain. "The entrance to the Celestial Wolf Path is inside the valley," the Wolf Emperor said with a faint smile as he looked at the valley before him. He took the lead and arrived at the entrance of the valley. At that moment, 2 gray-robed old men appeared. They stared at the Wolf Emperor cold and said, "Token of the Emperor of the Underworld." The Wolf Emperor bowed slightly and took out a jade token respectfully. He handed it to the 2 men. The 2 men verified it before allowing the Wolf Emperor and the others to enter. In the past, they only needed the Wolf Emperor's token to enter the valley. Now they needed the token of the Emperor of the Underworld. Nye Tian purposely sensed the strength of the 2 gray-robed old men. They were both sacred Monarch Tiani. The strength of either of the 2 old men was on par with the Wolf Emperor. The Wolf Emperor led the group into the valley and arrived at a cave deep in the valley. "Take a step forward and you'll arrive at the Celestial Wolf Path." The Wolf Emperor pointed at the cave and said with a faint smile. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He could sense a strange space-time aura from the cave. It seemed like the cave was a space-time gate. The others looked at the cave nervously. No one dared to be the first to enter. "Follow me closely." The Wolf Emperor let out a calm smile and took a step forward. His figure immediately disappeared from the cave. The cave was like a black hole swallowing him whole. Following this, the others dared to enter and disappeared one after another. Nie Tian was not in a hurry. He was the last to step into the valley. At that instant, he sensed a change in the space-time aura and found himself in a completely unfamiliar place. Is this the celestial wolf path? The others could not help but feel nervous as they stared at the scenery before them. The space here seemed to be different from the outside world. The space-time here was filled with a strange aura. Besides, the light here was very weak. Even with Nie Tian's sharp senses, he could only sense everything within 1,000 meters around him. Apart from that, there was nothing else that was different. Nie Tian took a deep breath and carefully examined the auras in his surroundings. Immediately afterwards, his expression flickered. He could sense that the aura here was extremely similar to that of the spiritual space. Crap! Nie Tian frowned and cursed in his heart. If this was the other spiritual space, it would not take long for the others to lose control of their divine sense. "Where's the Wolf Emperor?" At that instant, a panicked voice was heard. It sounded extremely high-pitched, as if the person was extremely nervous. "Wolf Emperor!" The others reacted and yelled, only to discover that the Wolf Emperor had disappeared. Nie Tian's face darkened. The sudden disappearance of the Wolf Emperor had caused him to feel even more uneasy. "Quickly look! What's that?" Following that, another cry of alarm sounded. Someone pointed to the distant sky and shouted. The crowd was startled. They followed the direction that the person was pointing at and saw a faint light dot flying toward them at a rapid speed. Following this, in the blink of an eye, the light dot turned into a blinding ball of light. "Don't tell me!" Everyone's expression changed, and they were shocked speechless. Chapter 3585. Possession by Tianchen Langchen. Everyone stared at the blazing white ball of light that was flying towards them. Their eyes trembled violently and their expressions became sluggish. The ball of light was like a bolt of lightning. It moved at an extremely fast speed, leaving a white mark in the dark space. Nie Tian felt an incomparably strong pressure, and he couldn't help but furrow his brows as he was shocked. It was as if the orb contained a boundless amount of energy that was exploding at an insane rate. While the crowd was still in shock, the glowing white orb suddenly trembled in the air before emitting a boundless amount of light that resembled countless tentacles, enveloping the crowd. Danger! Nie Tian was the first to react. A pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back as he retreated with explosive speed. However, he was still one step too slow. In the air, countless tentacles descended, entangling Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, and his expression changed. The tentacles were extremely strange. No matter how he struggled, it was useless. Instead, the tentacles entangled him tighter and tighter. "Damn it!" Nie Tian roared in a low voice as he glanced at the others, only to discover that they were all trapped by the tentacles, unable to move. In front of Tian Chen's energy, you mortals have no way to struggle. At this moment, a strange voice rang out. It was a little illusory and contained an oppressive aura, causing the faces of the crowd to turn pale. "What's going on?" Nie Tian's expression darkened as he stared at the glowing orb in the air. The voice he heard earlier originated from the glowing white orb. He could faintly see a blurry face within the orb, 70% resembling a human, 30% resembling a ghost. "Tianchen!" The crowd exclaimed in shock as they stared at the glowing white orb. The fear in their hearts was written all over their faces. So the glowing white orb was one of the 9 stars of the heavenly wolf. It was Tianchen. But Tianchen shouldn't be a source of energy. Why was it able to speak? Tianchen seemed to have its own consciousness. This was too strange, causing the crowd to be filled with shock. The sacrificial offerings that guy prepared for us are you people. At this moment, Tianchen spoke again. There was a sinister intent in his illusory voice as he said, although his talent is a bit lacking, it's still passable. It's enough to wake us up. Offerings. When Ye Tian and the others heard Tianchen's words, they couldn't help but be taken aback. Their expressions turned extremely ugly. Didn't they come to the Heavenly Wolf Road to fuse with Wolf Chen? Why did Tianchen refer to them as sacrifices? What does offering mean? What did Tianchen mean by awakening? Silver-haired kid, it's you. Suddenly Tianchen sneered. His blazing eyes glared at Nye Tian. Nye Tian frowned and his face darkened. His eyes flashed with a cold, killing intent. It was as if Tianchen had taken a fancy to his talent and wanted to use him as a sacrifice. Boom! Immediately afterwards, Nye Tian sensed a terrifying soul attack that bombarded his divine sense, causing a loud boom to go off in his head. In an instant, Nye Tian understood that Tianchen was trying to take over his body. However, in the next moment, Tianchen let out an ear-piercing scream. Then, his divine sense was driven out by a terrifying force. How is this possible? Tianchen screamed in the void. His blurry face became extremely strange, shocked and horrified. Even with his spiritual strength, he was unable to invade Nye Tian's divine sense. This was something he had never expected. You want to take over my body? Your divine sense is not strong enough. Nye Tianling sneered. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Then, a surge of sword essence gushed out of his body and tore the tentacles of light apart. Damn it! Tianchen let out a low roar and instantly became violent. Suddenly, a few rays of white light whizzed out and attacked Nye Tian. Nye Tian frowned and swung the sword of sky in his hand. The sword shadow shattered the rays of white light and pressed down on Tianchen. Tianchen reacted quickly. In a flash, he dodged the attack of the sword shadow. Son of AB***, you win. Tianchen steadied himself and let out a roar. Then, he released a tentacle and grabbed Ing Sangqiong. Then, he turned into a ray of light and flew away. Before Nye Tian could react, Tianchen and Ing Sangqiong had disappeared. The crowd looked in the direction where Tianchen and Ing Sangqiong had disappeared. Their eyes trembled and they were speechless. Until now, they still had not realized what had happened. What's going on? Where's the Wolf Emperor? Why have we become the sacrifice? After a while, the crowd came to their senses. Yin Liujie roared like a ferocious beast and stamped his feet. Nye Tian frowned and glanced at Yin Liujie cold without saying a word. The others also looked gloomy and the atmosphere was solemn. Why aren't you talking? Aren't you all very powerful? Why are you all mute now? Are you all in cahoots with the Wolf Emperor? Yin Liujie looked at the crowd and became more and more agitated. He shouted crazily. Shut up! Nye Tian frowned and looked at Yin Liujie cold. Yin Liujie felt the cold killing intent in Nye Tian's eyes and his expression changed. He was so scared that he could not speak. If you dare say another word, I'll kill you. Nye Tian threatened directly. His eyes were as cold as ice. Yin Liujie's eyes trembled and he subconsciously took a few steps back, not daring to make a sound. The others looked at Nye Tian, not expecting him to be so fierce. Nye Tian, he has been affected by the power here. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded and said in a deep voice. Nye Tian nodded. He had already seen that Yin Liujie was affected by the spiritual force in the space, which was why he was so agitated. Yin Liujie was also a genius martial artist. Under normal circumstances, he would not be so idiotic. The space of the path of the Sirius was very similar to the previous soul space. It was filled with spiritual force everywhere, which had a great impact on a martial artist's divine sense. Nie Tian did not feel any discomfort at this time, but he believed that the divine sense of the others must have begun to become unstable. Nie Tian even suspected that the soul space where they fought before was part of the path of the Sirius, but the Wolf Emperor and the others used a special method to separate the soul space. At this time, Nie Tian could only secretly pray that everyone would stay calm and try to hold on as long as possible. Chapter 3586. The three stars appear yet. Nie Tian nodded slightly. His gaze swept across the crowd as he explained what had happened. After hearing Nie Tian's words, the master of Bodhi Tree's face grew incomparably grim. He took a step forward and asked, Nie Tian, can you tell me why Tianchen failed to possess you? Nie Tian frowned and asked, Bodhi Seed, are you doubting me? When Tianchen was attempting to possess him, a force from Nie Tian's body had suddenly pushed him out. Nie Tian did not know how this had happened. He did not understand why Tianchen was unable to possess him either. He had thought that it was because of his strong mind power and the eternal night fox that Tianchen was unable to possess him. However, now that he thought about it, that was not the case. The force that had suddenly appeared in his body was not simple at all. Nie Tian could not understand this point, let alone explain it to the Bodhi Seed and the others. Should I not be doubting you? The Bodhi Seed's face darkened and he said in a cold tone, Do you dare say that you have nothing to do with the demonic moonwolf? The Bodhi Seed's words made everyone's faces darken. They immediately looked at Nie Tian. Indeed, there was a certain relationship between Nie Tian and the demonic moonwolf. Nie Tian had first defeated the demonic moonwolf in the wolf slave field. Then, when he was besieged by various forces, the demonic moonwolf's people had appeared to help him. Moreover, in the final battle of the Wolf Knight contest, the mysterious Emperor of the Underworld had personally appeared and ordered 7 kills to admit defeat. Because of all these, no one would believe that Nie Tian had nothing to do with the demonic moonwolf. At this moment, even Lan Zhuiying and Su Kuanga looked at Nie Tian with a strange expression. There is indeed a relationship between evil moonwolf and I. I know the Emperor of the Underworld, I know 7 murders, and I also know His Highness Wolf. However, I know nothing about what happened on the Heavenly Wolf Road. Of course, Nie Tian knew what everyone was thinking. He frowned and said, Do you think that if I was in cahoots with Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf, I would still be standing here? The reason why you're standing here right now is because the people from the Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf tribe want to know our every movement, the Bodhi Seed said coldly. His entire body was surging with killing intent. Bodhi Seed, I know you don't like me and want to kill me. Nie Tian looked at the Bodhi Seed and said solemnly, If you think that I am Evil Moon's Sirius people, you can separate from me. The Sirius path is so big we can go our separate ways. Separate ways? The Bodhi Seed sneered. Nie Tian, do you think that in our current situation, we will let a single demonic moon celestial wolf go? After saying that, the killing intent on his body became even stronger. You want to kill me? Nie Tian frowned and his expression changed. The Bodhi Seed had reason to suspect him, but if he wanted to kill him because of these suspicions, he would never accept it. It's not me who wants to kill you, it's us who want to kill you. The Bodhi Seed smiled coldly, his face surging with a sinister smile. At this moment, the rest of the people, including Yin Liujie, Liang Gui, and Ming Feng, all looked at Nie Tian with killing intent in their eyes. Meanwhile, Lan Zhuiying and Su Kuanga were hesitating. Their eyes flickered, obviously still somewhat indecisive. They suspected Nie Tian, but this suspicion was not enough for them to attack Nie Tian. If you two don't want to fight, then get out of my way. Although the Bodhi Seed was blind, he could clearly see everything in front of him. His body directly released a wave of aura, causing Lan Zhuiying and Su Kuanga to take a few steps back. The Bodhi Seed, we are on the same boat now. If we don't work together, I'm afraid that no one will survive. Lan Zhuiying's beautiful eyes slightly trembled. She took a step forward, her whole body surging with sword aura, revealing her strong side. At this moment, Su Kuanga also took a step forward and said heavily, "I believe in Nye Tian." The Bodhiseed's face sank and he said coldly, "So, you two will die together with Nye Tian." The Bodhiseed, "Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you?" Nye Tian frowned, his whole body releasing sword aura crazily, his eyes surging with a low murderous intent as he spoke coldly. "Nye Tian, do you really think that you can kill me?" The corner of the Bodhiseed's mouth twitched. He was not afraid at all. He had fought with Nye Tian twice. Once he did not gain the upper hand, and the other time he lost to Nye Tian. However, he still believed that, under normal circumstances, Nye Tian was definitely not his match. "The Bodhiseed, are you forcing me?" Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed, the sword aura around his body was like a sharp blade, stirring the void and making ear-piercing whistling sounds. They had already fallen into Evil Moon Tianlong's trap. Nye Tian really did not want to fight. Moreover, the Bodhiseed was a person with the Bodhi Buddha heart. His talent and strength were top-notch. Nye Tian did not want to fight, but if the Bodhiseed was aggressive, he could only fight. 4 against 3, you have no chance of winning. The Bodhiseed sneered, the sword aura around his body surging wildly, obviously ready to fight. At this time, behind the Bodhiseed were Yin Liujie, Ming Feng, and Liang Gui, while on Nye Tian's side were Lan Zhuiying and Su Kuanga. Although it was 4 against 3, if they really stood up, Nye Tian's side had a greater chance of winning. With Lan Zhuiying's strength, fighting two at the same time was no problem. However, Nye Tian did not want to fight. At this time, except for him, everyone else would lose control of their divine sense. During a fight, the martial artist's spirit was highly concentrated, and the greater the impact. Boom! At this time, the Bodhiseed took a step forward, his whole body's aura broke out like a landslide and a tsunami, and he roared, "Nye Tian, even if I, the Bodhiseed, die here today, I will kill you first." "Kill me? You think too highly of yourself." Nye Tian was a little irritated at this time. He sneered, the sword aura broke out like a landslide, and the terrifying sword aura hit the void, extremely terrifying. Bang! The next moment, the two terrible auras collided, and a muffled sound came from the void. Nye Tian and the Bodhiseed retreated a few steps at the same time. "Let's fight!" The Bodhiseed roared, and a terrible power broke out instantly. His aura was monstrous. The battle of life and death was about to begin. "Look over there!" At this moment, Yin Liujie suddenly shouted, looking at the void in the distance with horror. Nye Tian and the Bodhiseed were stunned at the same time, and then they felt that something was wrong. They turned to look at the void, and the scene in front of them made their faces change in horror. In the distant sky, 3 light spots appeared at an extremely fast speed, like 3 meteors, and in the blink of an eye, they came to the side of Nye Tian and the others. "Lang Chen." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and his face sank. Chapter 3587. Chapter 3582. Chapter 352. Your turn. 3 wolves. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. Before this, Lang Chen had already appeared. Although he failed to possess Nye Tian, he managed to capture Ying Sangqiong. At this moment, 3 Wolf Chens had actually appeared at the same time. How could the crowd not be alarmed? Whoosh! Hua! Whoosh! At this moment, Nye Tian and the others didn't even have the time to react. The 3 Wolf Saturns simultaneously released a blinding light. Immediately, a terrifying pressure appeared, directly enveloping them, firmly imprisoning them. Everyone felt an enormous force on their bodies, and they couldn't move at all. They couldn't help but panic. Kakik. At this time, the 3 Wolf Chens revealed blurry and strange faces. They laughed coldly in the void, appearing incomparably sharp. Tian Chen is right. These offerings are indeed terrible. One of them, Lang Chen, said gloomily. However, there are two that are not bad. Yang Chen, that brat with the Bodhi heart, is mine. Don't you dare fight with me for it. The other Lang Chen laughed maniacally as he stared coldly at the Bodhi seed. You can have that kid. I want that silver-haired kid. His heaven and earth sword heart is much more powerful than the Bodhi Buddha heart. Yang Chen laughed and stared at Nie Tian like an evil wolf. Yang Chen, Yu Chen, since the two of you have chosen the best, I can only choose that little girl. Her sword spirit body isn't bad either. Xing Chen, who was the last to choose, locked his gaze on Lan Zhuying. These three Wolf Chen were Yang Chen, Yu Chen, and Xing Chen. They had already regarded Nie Tian and the others as prey in a cage, and were extremely excited to divide the spoils. Damn it! The Bodhi seed growled. He hated the feeling of being treated as prey. In the next moment, the Bodhi bead appeared in his hand, and a beam of Buddhist light appeared, forcibly tearing apart the light shackles around him. The third Wolf Chen cried out in surprise. Then, he laughed and said, "This kid is not bad. He actually activated the Bodhi bead. I'll kill you." The Bodhi seed let out a furious roar, and the Bodhi pearl shone brightly. Rays of blinding light shot out like sharp blades toward the three celestials. "Little thing, it's impossible for you to contend against me, Yue Chen, with just this strength." Yu Chen laughed coldly. After that, a piercing light appeared. It was like a sharp blade filled with killing intent. It directly shattered the Buddhist light. Immediately after, the Bodhi seed was enveloped by a ray of light. With a cry of alarm, his entire body was actually devoured. "Yang Chen, Xing Chen, I'm going back to sacrifice this kid." "Hurry up and do it," Yu Chen said with a chuckle, then turned into a streak of light and disappeared. Everyone stared at the traces of light left in the air, their eyes trembling in fear. Among the 8 of them, the Bodhi seed's strength was second only to Nie Tian. Yet, he had been captured just like that. How could they not panic? "Little girl, come with me." At this moment, Xing Chen laughed coldly. A ray of light shot out, enveloping Lan Zhuying. Lan Zhuying's beautiful eyes flickered. She released her sword intent, wanting to break free from the shackles. However, she discovered that the more she resisted, the stronger the pressure became. "Little girl, you don't have the Bodhi heart nor the heaven and earth sword heart. It's impossible for you to resist the power of the Wolf Chen." Xing Chen laughed sinisterly. After that, the ray of light condensed into a tentacle, directly grabbing Lan Zhuying. Lan Zhuying's pretty face flickered as she exclaimed, "Nie Tian." Subconsciously, she called out Nie Tian's name. She knew that at this moment, only Nie Tian had a chance to save her. "Little girl, that kid with the heaven and earth sword heart can't even protect himself, how can he save you?" Xing Chen laughed maniacally. The tentacle of light moved, directly pulling Lan Zhuying over. "Is that so?" However, before he could finish his sentence, a cold voice rang out. Then, a ray of sword light flashed, directly tearing the Wolf Chen's shackles apart. "How is this possible?" Yang Chen and Xing Chen exclaimed at the same time, as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They didn't think that Nie Tian would be able to break free from the Wolf Chen's shackles. "I'd like to see just what kind of thing you wolves are." At this moment, Nie Tian let out a low roar. His eyes emitted a chilling light as he released the Extreme Demon Annihilation Seal. A sharp and dark aura instantly caused the surrounding space to stagnate. Xing Chen was astounded as he exclaimed, "Pfft!" In the next moment, the Extreme Demon Annihilation Seal whistled through the air, directly piercing through Xing Chen's white ball of light. "Xing Chen!" Yang Chen was shocked by the scene in front of him. He shouted, clearly panicking a little. He couldn't imagine that a cultivator at the 3rd stage of Heaven Rhythm could release such a terrifying power in an instant. "It's your turn." At this moment, Nie Tian's eyes trembled. With a low roar, the Sword of Sky appeared in his hand. He swung the sword and the image of the sword pressed down on Yang Chen like a mountain. Stinking brat, I'll kill you. At this moment, Yang Chun seemed to be enraged by Nie Tian. He let out a furious roar, and a terrifying beam of light appeared above the blazing white ball of light. It was as swift and fierce as the wind and lightning, and it directly cut the sword's shadow in half. Bang! The huge image of the sword trembled in the air for a moment before collapsing into pieces. Nie Tian frowned and retreated a few hundred meters. Hua! At this moment, the shattered white light in the void suddenly condensed together and formed a white ball of light. Nie Tian's pupils shrank as he exclaimed, "He's not dead?" Xingchen, who was destroyed by the extreme demon annihilation seal, was not dead. What the hell are these wolves? Why are they so difficult to deal with? Stinking brat, you're indeed difficult to deal with. Xingchen reappeared, but the light on the white ball of light dimmed a lot. It seemed that it was injured. Xingchen, let's go. At this moment, Yang Chen shouted from the side, and then his figure moved directly, leaving a trail of light in the sky. Almost at the same time, Xingchen also disappeared. Ming Feng and Yin Liujie also disappeared with Yang Chen and Xingchen. Obviously, these two people were taken away by the two wolves as sacrifices. Nie Tian frowned as he looked at the two streaks in the sky, his face extremely grim. These wolves were more difficult to deal with than he expected. Even if he used the extreme demon annihilation seal, he could only seriously injure one wolf Chen. Nie Tian, are you okay? At this time, Su Kuanga came to Nie Tian's side and asked nervously. I'm fine. Nie Tian smiled faintly and let out a long breath. He calmed down. Chapter 3588. 9 Sacrifices. 4 Wolf Chun appeared one after another and took away 4 people. At this time, only 4 of the 8 lords of the Azure Wolves were left. Nie Tian guessed that there would be other Wolf Chens who would also take the others away. Apart from him, Lan Zhuing, Su Kuanga, and Liang Gui couldn't resist the Wolf Chen's power at all. Xingchen had said that without the Buddha Bodhi heart and the Heaven and Earth Sword heart, it was impossible to resist the Wolf Chen's power. So far, only 2 people had broken free from the Wolf Chen's imprisonment, and they were Nie Tian and the Bodhi Seed. It seemed that the Wolf Chen's power was very afraid of the Buddha Bodhi heart and the Heaven and Earth Sword heart. Nie Tian, what should we do next? Su Kuanga looked at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice, barely able to maintain his composure. I don't know either. Nie Tian frowned and shook his head helplessly. Although he could resist the Wolf Chen to a certain extent with the Heaven and Earth Sword heart, he had no idea what to do next. Let's go back and leave this place. At this time, Liang Gui spoke with a trembling voice, obviously very afraid. Nie Tianlong looked at him coldly and didn't say anything. Since they had entered the celestial wolf path, they couldn't easily leave. They had entered a space-time door, and now they couldn't even find the exit. The only way is to walk to the end of the celestial wolf path. After a moment, Nie Tian's eyes slightly darkened as he said firmly. The Emperor of the Netherworld had said that he would wait for Nie Tian at the end of the celestial wolf path. It seemed that only by finding the Emperor of the Netherworld would there be a chance of survival. Lan Zhuing nodded slightly, very trusting of Nie Tian. If it wasn't for Nie Tian, she would have been captured by Xingchen. Su Kuanga and Liang Gui naturally had no objections. At this time, Nie Tian was their only hope. Then, the 4 didn't stop and continued forward along the dim path. Nie Tian thought as he walked. He didn't know what would happen after the Bodhi Seed and the others were captured. Could it be that they would really be sacrificed? At this moment, he was worried about an even more hidden danger. Including the 7 kills, there were a total of 9 Azure Wolf Lords, and the Celestial Wolf Jiuchen was the 9 Great Wolf Lords. From Lang Chen's words, Nie Tian deduced that the 9 Azure Wolf Lords were sacrifices used to awaken the Heavenly Wolf Jiuchen. However, the Emperor of the Underworld had painstakingly chosen 9 Masters of the Green Wolves, but he had chosen 9 sacrifices. Why did he do this? A person like the underworld emperor would not do meaningless things. Heavenly Wolf Jiochin awakening behind this matter, there must be an even greater conspiracy. It was just that Nye Tian still didn't know what this conspiracy was. Half a day later, Nye Tian and the others arrived outside a dark canyon. Nye Tian stopped in his tracks and took a deep breath. He used his divine sense to scan the area, and his heart couldn't help but shudder. He suddenly felt that the strange aura in the air seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. And in the canyon in front of him, there was a strong smell of blood, as if there was a huge blood spring in the canyon. Let's go back. Liang Gue was a little scared at this moment. His figure involuntarily retreated. Lan Zhuiying and Su Kuanga both had ugly expressions. Although they were trying their best to hide the fear in their hearts, their slightly trembling eyes betrayed them. In fact, they couldn't be blamed. Even Nye Tian was very worried at this moment. You guys wait here, I'll go in and take a look. Nye Tian took a deep breath and said to Lan Zhuiying and Su Kuanga beside him. Nye Tian, you have to be careful. Lan Zhuiying nodded slightly and said softly. She was originally a strong person, thinking that she was not afraid of anything. But at this moment, in her heart, she had developed a great reliance on Nye Tian. Nye Tian nodded with a smile, then took a step forward and walked into the canyon. As he entered the canyon, the smell of blood hit his face, causing him to frown. He had seen mountains of corpses, as well as the 9 underworld blood spring, but the smell of blood there could not be compared to the canyon in front of him. However, the strange thing was that although the canyon was filled with an incomparably dense stench of blood, the surroundings were empty. There was nothing at all. Strange. Nye Tian could not help but frown, but in his heart, he was even more careful. He walked forward step by step. At the same time, he highly concentrated his divine sense, trying to find the source of the smell of blood. However, the more he walked forward, the more strange he felt. This canyon seemed to be no different from an ordinary canyon, but it was filled with a terrible smell of blood. Nye Tian's face was calm. He looked back. He had already walked a few thousand meters. He could not feel the aura of Su Kuanga and the others at all. He wanted to go a little further. If he still couldn't find anything, he would go back first. Nye Tian, be careful. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded. It was incomparably panicked. Nye Tian's pupils suddenly shrank. He immediately saw a scarlet blood blade appear, directly attacking him. He frowned, instantly reacted. His figure slightly moved to the side, avoiding the blood blade attack. However, the aura of the blood blade was too fierce. On his chest, a wound appeared, deep to the bone. Blood instantly dyed his body red. Damn it! Nye Tian roared. His figure instantly retreated. Swish! Swish! However, at this moment, dozens of blood blades appeared at the same time, piercing through the air, heading towards him. Oh no! The sudden scene caused Nye Tian's eyes to tremble, his heart cursing. His star soul wings directly appeared on his back. His figure frantically retreated. However, his speed was far from the speed of those blood blades. PFFF, PFFF, PFFF. In the next instant, the sound of flesh being penetrated was heard. A few blood blades directly pierced through Nye Tian, instantly turning him into a man of blood. 9 sacrificial heavens, no one shall survive. At this moment, a low murderous voice sounded, following which a layer of blood mist rose from the ground. The entire canyon was filled with a strange and eerie aura. Run! Nye Tian forcefully endured the intense pain, let out a low roar, and frantically ran for his life. Wah! At this moment, a giant bloody hand appeared. It was a bloody mess, dripping with fresh blood, grabbing towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian suddenly felt a sudden chill behind him, causing his eyes to tremble. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, he did not even turn his head. He turned around and slashed out with his sword, borrowing the force of the sword intent to suddenly increase his speed. At the instant when the giant bloody hand landed, his figure dashed out of the canyon. Who? Nie Tian stabilized his figure, exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His whole body was already drenched in cold sweat. If he had been a moment later, he would have definitely been buried under that bloody hand. What is that bloody hand? What is the 9 sacrificial heavens? Nie Tian slightly calmed down, his eyes trembled, his heart was filled with shock. However, the next moment, he suddenly realized something, his eyes trembled, and he said in astonishment, "Where are Su Kuanga and the others?" He looked around and found nothing. His heart sank and his expression became extremely ugly. Lan Zhuiying, Su Kuanga and the others, unexpectedly disappeared. What a good kid with the heaven and earth sword heart, to be able to escape from the 9 sacrificial heavens. At this moment, a deep voice sounded, vigorous and mighty, revealing a strong oppressive aura. Then, a dazzling white ball of light instantly appeared in front of Nie Tian. Chapter 3589. 9 Sacrificial Blood Curse. Nie Tian looked at the blazing white ball of light in the air. His eyes trembled violently. It was difficult to hide the horror in his eyes. What appeared in front of him at this moment was Lang Chen. Moreover, this Lang Chen's aura was far more powerful than the Lang Chen he had seen before. The blazing white ball of light was extremely dazzling. It released an incomparably sharp aura that seemed capable of tearing everything apart. He had never expected that Lang Chen would appear at this time. He was in a very bad state at this time. Those blood blades had directly pierced through his body. He had nimbly dodged and avoided fatal injuries. However, he had lost too much blood. His face was as pale as paper, and his aura was somewhat unstable. Now that he had encountered such a powerful Lang Chen, he absolutely could not resist. Heaven and Earth Sword Heart Boy, it seems that you have seen the other Lang Chen. At this time, Lang Chen opened his mouth. There seemed to be a strange smile hanging on his blurred face. He said in a heavy tone, "Now, come with me. You are Emperor Chen?" Nie Tian's eyes sank as he asked in surprise. "You actually know?" Emperor Chen was surprised. He didn't expect that Nie Tian would know him. Nie Tian frowned as he saw Emperor Chen's reaction. His face instantly turned ugly. Wolf Emperor had once said that the strength of the 9 heavenly wolves was almost the same. Only Emperor Chen's strength was far above the other 8 heavenly wolves. This Emperor Chen's aura was far stronger than the Lang Chen he had seen before. He was undoubtedly the strongest Emperor Chen. If he had encountered an ordinary Lang Chen at this time, he might have had the strength to fight. He didn't expect that it would be the strongest Emperor Chen. "Boy, since you know who I am, then come with me," Emperor Chen said in a deep voice. His voice was calm, but there was a strong overbearing intent in it. "What if I say no?" Nie Tian's eyes slightly sank. A terrifying aura gushed out from his devil eye. He had previously injured a Lang Chen with the Extreme Devil Seal. He was prepared to use the Extreme Devil Seal again at this time. Even if he couldn't kill Emperor Chen, he should be able to cause a certain damage. Devil Eye. Emperor Chen's eyes trembled at this time. His complexion suddenly changed. He was extremely shocked. However, in the next moment, he laughed and said, "Kid, your demon eye is still too weak. You can't hurt me. If you're smart, then surrender." "Impossible!" Nie Tian roared in a low voice. Then, his devil eye trembled, and a dark pupil-strength blade pierced through the sky. It then attacked Emperor Chen. Emperor Chen suddenly released a ray of light at the same time, and blocked the eye power blade. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he was shocked by the scene in front of him. He hadn't expected that Emperor Chen would be able to block the Extreme Devil Exterminating Seal so easily. "Boy, this Emperor has already said that your devil eyes are too weak," Emperor Chen coldly smiled. He had revealed the insolence of a peerless powerhouse. "Damn it!" Nie Tian bellowed, and the Sword of Sky appeared in his hand. The sword will in his body surged wildly, and the sword momentum rushed into the void, but his face became even paler. He was already seriously injured, and releasing the sword will at this moment was extremely oppressive to his martial body. Emperor Chen's strength was far beyond his expectations, but he didn't give up resisting. He wanted to fight until the end. "Kid, your fighting spirit is not bad, but it's useless in front of this emperor." Emperor Chen smiled cold, and then released a huge ray of light, which shrouded Nie Tian like a stormy sea. Nie Tian felt the incomparable pressure, and his complexion slightly changed. The sword of sky streaked across the sky, and was about to slash down. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt a terrible force appear in his body. It was like thousands of sharp blades, tearing his body apart. The next moment, his body trembled, and he lost consciousness on the ground. "Kid, the power of the 9 sacrifices of punishing heaven is not something you can imagine." Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian, and said indifferently, and then his figure moved, and directly took Nie Tian away. Vaguely, Nie Tian felt that he had a very long dream. In the dream, he fell into an abyss and kept sinking. He wanted to struggle, but the more he struggled, the deeper he sank. Until one moment, a hand of light appeared and pulled him out of the abyss. Nie Tian suddenly woke up, and his whole body was drenched in cold sweat, and his body was covered with scabs, and his whole body stank. "This." He frowned, and his face was stunned, and he couldn't react for a long time. "Kid, you're awake." At this moment, a familiar voice sounded, and then Emperor Chen appeared, and the face in the blazing white light became much clearer. His eyes looked at Nie Tian and said with a faint smile, "Your martial body is stronger than I thought, and you've recovered well. Now go take a bath." Nie Tian frowned. He looked at Emperor Chen with a puzzled look on his face. He was dumbfounded for a long time. What's going on? Why is he here? Why didn't Emperor Chen kill him? Why didn't he take over his body? Moreover, Emperor Chen didn't show the slightest bit of malice, and on the contrary, he was very calm. "Clean yourself up first, I will explain everything to you later." Emperor Chen knew what Nie Tian was thinking, and said with a faint smile, "Okay." Nie Tian nodded. Although he really wanted to know what was going on, the stench on his body was too strong, and even he couldn't stand it. He jumped into a small lake not far away and thoroughly cleaned himself. He found that the scabs on his body were very strange, and seemed to have some kind of incantation power on them, and it was very difficult to remove them. After half an hour, Nie Tian cleaned himself up, and walked out of the small lake. At this time, he made an even more shocking discovery. His body's injuries had magically recovered, and his strength had advanced to the 4th level of heaven rhythm. That's right, his strength had increased again. "Little guy, you feel much better now." Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian and said with a faint smile. Nie Tian nodded and then asked, "You're the one who saved me? Who else but this emperor?" Emperor Chen laughed. "Your martial body is very strong, but the power of the heaven-punishing 9 sacrifice is not something you can imagine. Without this emperor, you would have been swallowed by the blood curse." 9 sacrifice blood curse? Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but be surprised. Emperor Chen nodded and said, "You fell into the heaven-punishing 9 sacrifice formation, and your body was pierced by the 9 sacrifice blood blade. The power of the blood curse invaded your martial body, and this emperor forced it out. That's how you came back to life. So those scabs were formed by the 9 sacrifice blood curse. No wonder they smell so bad, and there's also the incantation's aura," Nie Tian murmured. He remembered that he had wanted to attack Emperor Chen. However, a dreadful force had appeared, and had made him lose consciousness. That terrifying power was the power of the 9 sacrifice blood curse. Chapter 3590. Chapter 3585. Chapter 3585. The Wolf's Hour. Emperor Chen saved Nie Tian, helped him force out the power of the 9 sacrificial blood curse, restored his strength, and even helped him improve his cultivation. But Nie Tian did not understand why Emperor Chen saved him. Wasn't Emperor Chen one of the 9 stars of the Heavenly Wolf? Shouldn't he take over his body? You are the sacrifice chosen by the Emperor of the Underworld. I don't know why I saved you. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian, shook his head and smiled bitterly, then sighed and said, "Perhaps I see hope in you." "What do you mean?" Nie Tian frowned and looked stunned. He did not have the time to talk in riddles with Emperor Chen. "What's your name?" Emperor Chen looked a lot more serious as he looked at Nie Tian and asked. "Nie Tian." Nie Tian replied indifferently. "Nie Tian, do you know why the Emperor of the Underworld sent 9 extremely talented martial artists into the Heavenly Wolf Road?" Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian and asked. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he nodded and said, "The Heavenly Wolf Path has the 9 moons Heavenly Wolf, and the 9 of us are sacrifices to it, right?" "Yes." Emperor Chen was slightly surprised. He did not expect Nie Tian to know something. He continued, "The sacrifice of the 9 of you is to awaken the 9 stars of the Heavenly Wolf." "Awaken the 9 stars of the Heavenly Wolf?" Nie Tian frowned as he did not understand. "The blazing white ball of light you see now is actually a powerful seal." Emperor Chen's eyes became serious and said, "The so-called 9 stars of the Heavenly Wolf are actually 9 sealed martial artists." Nie Tian's face sank and became even more confused. Wasn't the 9 stars of the Heavenly Wolf the 9 ancient forbidden powers? How did it become 9 martial artists? And what was the seal that Emperor Chen was talking about? In ancient times, there was an ancient race called the Heavenly Wolf race. The Heavenly Wolf race had 9 sacred objects called the 9 stars of the Heavenly Wolf. Only the most powerful warriors of the Celestial Wolf clan were qualified to fuse with the Celestial Wolf 9 hours. The experts who have fused with the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars are also called the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars. They rule the Heavenly Wolf clan. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian and continued, "The Heavenly Wolf 9 stars will protect the Heavenly Wolf clan for generations." However, a long time ago, the Celestial Wolf clan was invaded by other clans. All of the Celestial Wolf clan members were imprisoned, and the Celestial Wolf Jiuchen was also reduced to a prisoner. He was sealed and became Langchen. Emperor Chen's eyes flickered as he spoke till here. It seemed as if he was recalling something from a long time ago. Could it be that the one who invaded the Heavenly Wolf clan was the Emperor of the Netherworld? Nie Tian couldn't help but ask in surprise. "Yes." Emperor Chen nodded solemnly and said, "The Emperor of the Netherworld was the one who invaded back then. He personally sealed the Heavenly Wolf clan and also sealed the Heavenly Wolf Jiuchen." This is impossible." Nie Tian frowned, his face full of doubt. The Netherworld Emperor he knew was the Netherworld Emperor of that domain. He was absolutely not as terrifying as Emperor Chen had described. Could it be that the Emperor of the Netherworld was hiding a secret that he didn't know about? "How much do you know about the Emperor of the Netherworld?" Emperor Chen asked as he looked at Nie Tian with a strange light in his eyes. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He told Emperor Chen everything he knew about the Emperor of the Netherworld. The ancient Ming race, the heaven-punishing demon heart, the demon heart 3 forms. Emperor Chen couldn't help but sigh after listening to Nie Tian. Nie Tian, the Emperor of the Netherworld's true identity is far more complicated than you can imagine. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He was startled for a moment before he asked, "If the Emperor of the Netherworld is really that powerful, why would he appear in a domain? This Emperor doesn't know either." Emperor Chen shook his head. "Perhaps only the Emperor of the Netherworld himself can answer this question." Nie Tian frowned. Since the Emperor of the Netherworld sealed the 9 stars Heavenly Wolf, why would he awaken it now? The Emperor of the Netherworld wants to use the power of the 9 stars Heavenly Wolf to open the heaven-punishing gate. Emperor Chen's face darkened. The heaven-punishing gate? Nie Tian was stunned. "Nie Tian, your heaven and earth sword heart has already opened the sky sword, right?" Emperor Chen frowned and looked at Nie Tian. Yes. Nie Tian nodded. His sky sword heart had opened with the Bodhi seed's Bodhi bead. The heaven-punishing gate of the heaven-punishing demon heart is like the sky sword heart of the heaven and earth sword heart. Emperor Chen's eyes flickered as he looked at Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He seemed to have understood something. He guessed that the Bodhi Buddhist heart, the heaven and earth sword heart, the heaven-punishing demon heart, and even the heavenly sacred heart had a deep connection with each other. Perhaps they came from the same source. The Bodhi Buddhist heart had the Bodhi bead, the heaven and earth sword heart had the sky sword, and the heaven-punishing demon heart had the heaven-punishing gate. Just like the time when the Bodhi seed went into seclusion to open the Bodhi bead, the Emperor of the Netherworld awakened the 9 stars heavenly wolf to open the heaven-punishing gate. The heaven-punishing gate, so this is the Emperor of the Netherworld's true purpose. Nie Tian frowned. I'm afraid the Emperor of the Netherworld's purpose for opening the heaven-punishing gate is not that simple. He must be brewing a bigger conspiracy. Emperor Chen frowned and said. Nie Tian nodded slightly in silence. It was a waste for the Emperor of the Netherworld to spend so much energy to select the 9 lords of the Green Wolves and sacrifice them to the 9 stars heavenly wolf. Perhaps Emperor Chen was right. The Emperor of the Netherworld had other plans. Sir Emperor Chen, why did you save me? Nie Tian's eyes suddenly darkened as he asked in a deep voice. Emperor Chen had told him so much, but he still couldn't explain why Emperor Chen wanted to save him. I saved you because I made a choice. Emperor Chen smiled bitterly as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Choice. Nie Tian went blank for a moment, confused. Between my life and the Heavenly Wolf tribe, I choose the Heavenly Wolf tribe. Emperor Chen nodded solemnly. Huh. Nie Tian looked at Emperor Chen and couldn't help but frown. He then thought of something and said, You want me to save your tribe? Yes. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian with a solemn face and nodded. Nie Tian, I see a possibility in you, a possibility to defeat the Emperor of the Netherworld. You are a warrior with the heaven and earth sword heart. You have a great chance to defeat the Emperor of the Netherworld. I can use my life to exchange for your promise. Nie Tian's face sank slightly. He looked at Emperor Chen but didn't say anything. As long as you promise me to save the Heavenly Wolf tribe, I am willing to sacrifice myself to help you merge with Emperor Chen. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian with a fiery light in his eyes and said in a deep voice, You want me to fuse with the Emperor Star? Nie Tian's brows wrinkled. There was a strange look in his eyes as he looked at the Emperor Star. Emperor Chen had spoken very generously, but Yi Shiwen could see something different. If Emperor Chen really thought that the Heaven and Earth Sword Heart could fight against the Emperor of the Netherworld, then why didn't he take over Nie Tian's body and directly occupy the Heaven and Earth Sword Heart? Rather than having Nie Tian rescue his clansmen, it would be better for him to rescue them himself. Chapter 3591. Chapter 3586. Chapter 3586. Fuse with Emperor Star. Nie Tian didn't believe that Emperor Chen would be so kind as to help him fuse with the power of Emperor Chen just because of a promise. I can't possess you. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian. He remained silent for a long time. Then, he finally said, There is a very powerful force in your body. It prevents my spirit from entering. Nie Tian furrowed his brows, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Emperor Chen wasn't as simple as he seemed on the surface. His words were dignified. But it was another matter altogether. Then, the corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and a strange light surged in his eyes as he calmly asked, Is that all? He still didn't believe that Emperor Chen was willing to sacrifice his life to help him in exchange for a promise, since he couldn't seize his body. Emperor Chen had just met him. So, why did he trust him so much? Emperor Chen's clansmen had been sealed for such a long time. And he himself had also been sealed. However, he had still managed to live until now despite being wronged. This showed that he was a tenacious person. His desire for revenge was very strong. Nie Tian found it hard to believe that he would hand over the matter of revenge to someone he had only met once. Nie Tian, this emperor was right about you. You're even smarter than this emperor had imagined. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian. Then, he smiled in a strange manner and said, I don't want to die. Because I still have too many things to do. But this emperor has no choice. Nie Tian wrinkled his brows. He was somewhat doubtful as he waited for Emperor Chen to continue. This emperor knows very well what kind of person the underworld emperor is. To open the heaven punishing gate, he doesn't just need to awaken the heavenly wolf 9 moons. He also needs to sacrifice the heavenly wolf 9 moons. Emperor Chen's complexion was gloomy and unsightly. It was obvious that he was in great pain. He said, The heaven punishing gate needs to absorb the power of the 9 stars in order to open. And after the heaven punishing gate opens, the underworld emperor will definitely sacrifice heavenly wolf Jiuchen to increase the power of his heaven punishing demon heart. Therefore, even if I possess you and help the emperor of the underworld open the gate of execution, he will not let serious Jiuchen go. In front of this emperor is only death. No matter if I help the underworld emperor or you, I will be killed. The choice I'm talking about isn't between me and the Sirius tribe, but between you and the emperor of the underworld. This emperor doesn't completely trust you, but compared to you, the emperor of the netherworld is even less trustworthy. Emperor Chen smiled bitterly as he said this. He then said in a pained manner, Nie Tian, do you understand why this emperor wants to help you fuse with the power of Emperor Chen? Nie Tian furrowed his brows, and his expression did not look good. Shi Mu could feel Emperor Chen's pain at this moment. He could feel the despair and helplessness of Emperor Chen as he faced the future. It didn't matter if Emperor Chen chose Nie Tian or the Emperor of the Netherworld, he would still die. Compared to the Underworld Emperor, Nie Tian was more trustworthy. Lord Emperor Chen, I believe in your words. Nie Tian slightly nodded with a solemn look on his face. A person who was willing to sacrifice his life to save his clansmen was worthy of respect. Nie Tian, this emperor can help you fuse with the power of Emperor Chen now. But this emperor wants to hear your promise first. Emperor Chen's eyes slightly trembled as he said in a heavy tone. Yes. Nie Tian nodded heavily and said solemnly, I, Nie Tian, promise in the name of martial arts that I will do my best to save the Heavenly Wolf clan. Very good. Emperor Chen looked at Nie Tian, nodded with a smile, and said, Nie Tian, this emperor will fuse with the power of Emperor Chen now. Nie Tian slightly nodded, but there was no joy on his face at this time. The power of Emperor Chen was nothing to him. Emperor Chen's sacrifice had placed a huge responsibility on his shoulders. Nie Tian, get ready, this emperor is about to start. At this time, Emperor Chen said in a deep voice. Then, the blazing white light ball suddenly trembled and released a dazzling light that directly shrouded Nie Tian. Boom! In a flash, Nie Tian felt a terrifying oppressive force falling on him. Suddenly, a tearing pain struck his whole body. Immediately afterwards, waves of terrifying power poured into Nie Tian's body like torrential wave. The tearing pain made Nie Tian frown. His face became ferocious, and his whole body was drenched in sweat. But at the same time, he also felt that the power of his martial body was crazily soaring. At this time, an even more terrifying force appeared, and the instantaneous pain made Nie Tian couldn't help but scream. Nie Tian, the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars, is the sacred object of our Heavenly Wolf clan. The power of Emperor Chen is the strongest power of the Heavenly Wolf 9 stars. Although you are not from the Heavenly Wolf clan, your martial body is much stronger than ordinary warriors. Emperor Chen's voice sounded in a loud voice. Fusing with the power of Emperor Chen is enough to increase your strength by more than 4 levels in an instant. Boom! As his voice fell, an even more violent force roared in Nie Tian's body. At this moment, Nie Tian felt that the bones, blood, and meridians of his whole body seemed to have been tempered and improved qualitatively. The power of Emperor Chen continued to pour into Nie Tian's body for half a day before it gradually weakened. When the last ray of light disappeared, Nie Tian was already exhausted. It was a miracle that he could withstand the fusion of the power of Emperor Chen. Nie Tian. At this time, Emperor Chen's voice sounded. It was the last strand of his consciousness. You have fused with the power of Emperor Chen. From now on, you are the Heavenly Wolf Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf clan. Heavenly Wolf Emperor? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He still didn't know that fusing with the power of Emperor Chen would make him the Heavenly Wolf Emperor. Nie Tian, don't forget your promise. The people of the Heavenly Wolf clan are your responsibility. Emperor Chen's voice continued to sound, but it was getting weaker and weaker. When the last word fell, the last strand of consciousness also disappeared. Lord Emperor Chen. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he shouted, but there was no response. Emperor Chen, the previous Heavenly Wolf Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf clan, had completely disappeared. Nie Tian didn't even know what his real name was. Nie Tian was stunned, and he felt a sense of loss. He couldn't recover for a long time. Nie Tian, check your current strength. After a while, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded, and he couldn't hide his excitement. Okay. Nie Tian nodded slightly, and the moment he looked inside his martial body, his eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he said in astonishment, 8th stage Heavenly Charm. That's right, 8th stage Heavenly Charm. After fusing with the power of Emperor Chen, Nie Tian's strength directly soared from the 4th stage Heavenly Charm to the 8th stage Heavenly Charm, and he was only one step away from the pinnacle of the Holy Disciple realm. Nie Tian didn't expect the power of Emperor Chen to be so terrifying that it made his cultivation soar by 4 stages in an instant. More importantly, after fusing with the power of Emperor Chen, his martial body had a qualitative improvement, and his bones and meridians were even stronger than before. Chapter 3592. Taken over. Very good. Nie Tian thoroughly checked his martial body and found no abnormalities. He couldn't help but laugh. The power of the Emperor's stars had greatly enhanced his strength. In fact, it had exceeded his expectations. Nie Tian, with your current strength, even if you don't use the divine demon body, you can easily fight against warriors below the 4th level of the Heavenly Mandate realm. The Ghost Emperor was also very excited and laughed. It had to be said that Nie Tian, in addition to his terrifying talent and strength, was also extremely lucky to be able to fuse with the power of Emperor Star. Nie Tian smiled faintly and nodded. In fact, for a warrior to advance from the 4th level of Heavenly Mandate to the 8th level of Heavenly Mandate, the improvement in combat strength was not great, at least not a qualitative improvement. But Nie Tian was different. The power of Emperor Star directly improved his martial body aptitude, causing his combat strength to skyrocket. More importantly, Nie Tian's strength had reached the 8th level of Heavenly Mandate realm, making him closer to the Heavenly Mandate realm. Next, Nie Tian rested for half a day, restoring his martial body to its best state. It's time to find the Emperor of the Underworld. He smiled faintly, the corner of his mouth raised into a faint smile. His current strength was still unable to compete with the Emperor of the Underworld, but he had to find the Emperor of the Underworld, not only for share, but also to save Su Kuanga and the others. Nie Tian faintly remembered that he was unconscious for about 3 days, then spent half a day fusing with the power of Emperor Star, rested for half a day, and a total of 4 days had passed. I hope nothing happened to Su Kuanga and the others. Nie Tian frowned and murmured. Nie Tian, how are you going to save them? At this time, the voice of the Ghost Emperor sounded, unable to hide the worry in his voice. Although Nie Tian's strength had improved a lot, the enemy he was going to face next was an expert like the Emperor of the Underworld. There was only one power in Nye Tian's body that could barely threaten the Emperor of the Underworld, and that was the Earth Destruction Star Soul. But it was almost impossible to kill the Emperor of the Underworld with just the Earth Destruction Star Soul. Therefore, Nye Tian's trip this time was extremely dangerous. Let's go take a look at the Great Sacrificial Heaven Array of 9. Nye Tian frowned and said in a deep voice. When Emperor Chun helped him fuse with the power of Emperor Chun, he had said that the Emperor of the Netherworld had to open the Heaven Punishment Gate in the Great Formation of 9 Sacrificial Heaven Punishment. The Ghost Emperor nodded and did not say anything else. Nye Tian didn't hesitate and headed straight for the heaven-punishing 9 sacrificial array. Soon, he arrived outside the canyon. Before entering the canyon, Nye Tian once again smelled the pungent smell of blood, causing him to frown repeatedly. It was as if the stench of blood from the punishing Heaven 9 sacrifices was even stronger than before. Emperor Chun, you're back. Right at this moment, a low voice resounded, and it was accompanied by a dense smell of blood. It was ghastly and terrifying. Blazing Jiufeng. Nye Tian's eyes trembled slightly when he heard this voice. A frigid light flickered in his eyes. In the next moment, Blazing Jiufeng's voice resounded. His entire body surged with the power of golden flames, and he stood in midair. The way he looked at Nye Tian had become extremely strange. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Nye Tian's mouth. Are you surprised to see me, Lian Jiufeng? You're Nye Tian? Blazing Jiufeng's pupils abruptly shrank. Undisguisable shock appeared on his face. Of course. Nye Tian smiled faintly with a hint of mockery in his eyes. He said, Who else do you think I am? How is this possible? Blazing Jiufeng's eyes shook violently as he exclaimed in disbelief. He never imagined that the person who appeared in front of him right now was not Emperor Chun, but Nye Tian. However, he clearly sensed the power of Emperor Chun from Nye Tian. What was going on? Could Nye Tian have merged with Emperor Chen's power? Are you surprised that I've merged with Emperor Chen's power? Nye Tian looked at Blazing Jiufeng and enjoyed the latter's expression very much. He smiled faintly. Impossible. Blazing Jiufeng growled. Emperor Chun should be trying to possess you. How can you have merged with Emperor Chen's power? Do you still think it's impossible for me to stand here? Nye Tian smiled faintly. He didn't want to waste any more words with Blazing Jiufeng. His expression changed, and he growled, Where's the Netherworld Emperor? Blazing Jiufeng's eyes trembled. He still couldn't accept what was happening in front of him. He couldn't believe that even Emperor Chun of the Heavenly Wolf race had lost to Nye Tian. I ask you, where's the Netherworld Emperor? At this moment, Nye Tian opened his mouth again and let out a low roar. Then, he unleashed his sword aura in a frenzy and directly enveloped Blazing Nine Dust. Bang! A dull sound rang through the air. Blazing Jiufeng was forced several meters back. However, he quickly steadied himself and stared cold at Nye Tian. He said darkly, You're at the 8th level of Heavenly Charm already. Haven't you reached the 9th level of Heavenly Charm as well? Nye Tian smiled faintly. He wasn't too surprised. It had only been a few days since they last met, but Blazing Jiufeng was already a holy disciple at the 9th level of Heavenly Charm. His strength had basically increased by an entire realm. However, Nye Tian didn't find it strange at all. He still hadn't figured out Blazing Jiufeng and the Netherworld Emperor's identities, so he wouldn't be too surprised if something happened to them. Nye Tian, do you really think you'll be able to stop the Netherworld Emperor by yourself? Lian Jiufeng had calmed down quite a bit. He let out a cold growl and unleashed his aura in a frenzy. He looked like a huge fireball as the terrifying power of golden flames surged through the air. It was as if he was going to burn the entire world. Do you think you can stop me by yourself? Nye Tianling smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain and his sword aura was as sharp as a blade. I might not be able to stop you by myself, but the 9 of us can definitely do it. Blazing Jiufeng's lips twitched as his eyes flashed with coldness. The moment he finished speaking, 8 figures appeared in the canyon and surrounded Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he looked at the figures around him. His expression became extremely dark. He was very familiar with these 8 figures. They were the 8 Blue Wolf Lords. However, at this moment, the 8 Azure Wolf Masters were much stronger than before. Furthermore, their gazes were extremely strange, as if they were emitting a sinister killing intent. Su Kuanga. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He immediately looked at Su Kuanga and said solemnly. However, when Su Kuanga looked at Nie Tian, the corner of his mouth hung a cold smile, and his whole body was filled with killing intent. Nie Tian, he's no longer Su Kuanga, Blazing Jiufeng smiled coldly and said solemnly. He's been possessed. Nie Tian's pupils abruptly shrank. His expression abruptly changed and became incomparably dark. The Su Kuanga in front of him was like a completely different person. His eyes and aura were completely different. He had clearly been possessed. Next, Nie Tian looked at Lan Zhuiying. The latter's face was also extremely unfamiliar to him. Chapter 3593. 1 against 9. Nie Tian was instantly enraged that Su Kuanga, Lan Zhuiying, and the others had been possessed by Lang Chen. Terrifying sword intent surged violently through the air. Nie Tian, what are your chances of winning against 9 great geniuses at the same time? Lien Jiufeng looked at the enraged Nie Tian and smiled coldly. The corner of his lips curled into a sinister smile. Nie Tian hadn't been possessed by Di Chen, but he had successfully fused with Di Chen's power. This had greatly exceeded Lien Jiufeng's expectations. However, Lien Jiufeng was still full of confidence. He didn't believe that Nie Tian could fight against all 9 of them at the same time. Although Nie Tian had obtained the position of Night Wolf's chief during the Night Wolf struggle, he and 7 kills hadn't won in the final battle. Therefore, it was hard to say who was stronger between 7 kills and Nie Tian. Adding the Bodhi Seed, Lan Zhuiying, and the others, Nie Tian had no chance of winning at all. Attack! Nie Tian's gaze was incomparably dark as he stared coldly at Lien Jiufeng. His sword intent surged violently through the air like a tidal wave. Kill! Lien Jiufeng didn't waste any more words. He growled, and the other 8 immediately moved. They attacked Nie Tian at almost the same time. Boom! 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 In the blink of an eye, a terrifying force rumbled out and crushed down on Nie Tian like a colossal beast. Rumbling sounds rang out in the void, as if time and space were about to collapse. Soaring God Sword Formation, God Execution. However, Nie Tian didn't show the slightest hint of fear on his face as he let out a bellow. Sword intent surged out of him like raging waves, condensing into magical symbols in the air. In the next moment, an enormous sword shadow shot up into the sky, causing the void to rumble and shake violently. Rumble! Bang bang bang! Then, the violent forces clashed against each other and a terrifying explosion sounded in the air. Ear-piercing whistling sounds could be heard, followed by a series of muffled sounds. Qi Sha and the other 8 people were directly blown away by the impact. Lien Jiufeng did not take action. Instead, he watched from the sidelines. The scene that entered his eyes caused his eyes to tremble in shock. He did not expect Nie Tian to be so terrifying. He was able to fight against 7 kills and the others alone. What was even more frightening was that Nie Tian was standing right in the center of the collision, yet he was not injured at all. It was hard to imagine how terrifyingly strong his martial body was. However, Nie Tian was fighting against the 8 of them head-on. At this moment, the blood within his body was surging violently, and his aura was somewhat unstable. 7 kills and the others had been possessed by Lang Chen, and their strength had increased by a lot. Apart from the Bodhi Seed, who was at the 9th tier of Heavenly Rhythm, the others had all broken through to the Heavenly Mandate Divine Master level. Fighting against 8 or even 10 heavenly mandate divine masters at the same time was nothing to the current Nyetian. However, he was facing 8 monstrous genius-level heavenly mandate divine masters. This made him feel even more pressured. With 7 kills and the others' current strength, any one of them was definitely comparable to a heavenly mandate 5th-tier divine master. Kid, so you are the most talented among the 9. At this moment, Liang Gui, who had already been possessed by Lang Chen, laughed coldly. Then, he moved and attacked directly. An enormous aura devoured the heavens and earth, blasting everything in its path. Get lost! Nie Tian's eyes trembled. With a roar, he slashed out with the sword of sky. The shadow of the sword whistled through the air, and a blinding sword radiance with a murderous aura blasted forward. Bang! With a muffled sound, a terrifying power erupted from the sword's shadow, and Liang Gui's figure was instantly knocked back, leaving a bloody trail in the air. The possessed Liang Gui was already a heavenly mandate 2nd-tier divine master, but he could not fight back against Nie Tian head-on. Bang! At the same time, an enormous palm fell and blasted directly on Nie Tian's body, causing him to tremble and being forced back dozens of meters. After he stabilized himself, there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Boom! Boom! Following that, another 3 enormous forces rushed over. Their auras were crazy and violent, blasting towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned slightly. Sword will surged all over his body, and the sacred heaven-defying sword struck out again. A terrifying sword aura blasted out, and the sword's shadow was like a raging dragon, forcefully resisting the 3 violent forces. Bang! 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 Then, wherever the sword's shadow passed, 3 muffled sounds could be heard. A terrifying force exploded, forming a huge wave in the air. The wave spread in all directions, as if it was going to devour everything. The 3 figures were sent flying, and they were blasted thousands of meters away. Kill! Before Nie Tian could clearly see who the 3 people were, a low and stern voice suddenly sounded in his ears, causing his eyes to tremble involuntarily. Immediately after, he felt an extremely murderous aura coming towards him, making him feel a strong sense of threat. In the next moment, almost subconsciously, Nie Tian tilted his body slightly, and a blade of extreme killing intent whizzed out, almost touching his chest. The razor-sharp aura left a frighteningly deep wound on his chest, which was so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood instantly gushed out of the wound, looking extremely miserable. Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and he forcefully stabilized his body. If his reaction had been a little slower just now, this extreme killing blade would have taken his life. Qi Sha. In the next moment, he suddenly turned around and looked at Qi Sha in the sky. His eyes trembled slightly. I am Xian Chen. Qi Sha's eyes were filled with murderous aura as he looked at Nie Tian coldly. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and the shock in his heart was written on his face. In order to open the gate of heaven punishing, the Emperor of the Underworld had sacrificed Qi Sha. Right now, Qi Sha had been possessed by Xian Chen of the Celestial Wolf 9 Stars. Qi Sha, kill him! At this time, Lai Yanjiufeng growled, his voice extremely dark. Although Qi Sha had been possessed by Xian Chen, Lai Yanjiufeng was still used to calling him Qi Sha. Amen. Qi Sha nodded heavily. His demon eyes of supreme killing trembled slightly, and they flashed with cold murderous light. They were like 2 abysses that wanted to devour everything. Demon eyes of supreme killing. Feeling the killing intent in Qi Sha's eyes, Nie Tian could not help but frown and cry out. Xian Chen had possessed Qi Sha. He did not know to what extent the demon eyes of supreme killing could be unleashed. On the other side, Bodhi Zi, Lan Zhuiying, and Ing Sangqiong stared at Nie Tian, ready to attack at any moment. Lai Yanjiufeng looked at Nie Tian with dark eyes. The corner of his lips curled up slightly, and he said coldly, Nie Tian, how much longer can you last? Whoosh! In the next moment Qi Sha's figure moved. The demon eyes of supreme killing unleashed an extremely murderous aura. An extremely sharp eye bloodline power tore through the air and attacked Nie Tian. At the same time, Bodhi Zi, Lan Zhuing, and Ing Tsangqiong attacked as well. Chapter 3594. Towering Sword Will, Nie Tian, you're dead. Lien Jiufeng's eyes trembled slightly. It was as if he could already see Nie Tian being killed. From his point of view, Qi Sha, Bodhi Seed, Lan Zhuing, and Ing Tsangqiong were attacking at the same time. Nie Tian was severely injured and did not have the ability to fight back at all. Although 7 kills hadn't been able to kill Nie Tian, it had definitely caused Nie Tian to suffer heavy injuries. Lien Jiufeng refused to believe that Nie Tian would be able to block it. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he felt the overwhelming pressure from the void. Boom! In the next moment, his body trembled, and an extremely violent sword will surged out like a surging tide. It filled the heavens and the earth, and outside his body, it condensed into a huge sword shadow, and its momentum swallowed the heavens. At this moment, it seemed as if the entire world was filled with Nie Tian's sword will. He was like an enormous sword that stood between the heavens and the earth, announcing that he was the absolute ruler of this world. How is this possible? Lien Jiufeng stared at the scene before him in shock. He could not believe his eyes. He could not believe that Nie Tian had burst out with such a terrifying sword intent in an instant. Qi Sha and the rest's eyes darkened and their faces were filled with horror. 9 limits of the starry sky, sun annihilation. At that moment, Nie Tian let out a low roar. The sky sword slashed towards the sky. The sword's shadow whistled through the air like a gigantic beast, devouring the sky. In an instant, waves of sword will rush towards the surrounding space, as if it wanted to destroy the heavens and earth. Rumble. In the void, ear-piercing rumbles resounded incessantly. A terrifying power wreaked havoc. It was as if thousands of demons were dancing, causing the surrounding void to tremble. Lien Jiufeng could not help but back away. His fiery eyes were trembling non-stop. He was deeply shocked by Nie Tian's strength. Chi chi chi. In the void, ear-piercing whistling sounds resounded unceasingly. The collision and devouring of power caused the space to descend into chaos. Terrifying shockwaves seemed to want to tear the heavens and earth apart. Bang, bang, bang. After a while, a terrible muffled sound came from the chaotic void, and several bloody figures were directly sent flying, leaving bloody trails in the air. Lien Jiufeng exclaimed in shock. After which, he saw a silhouette walking out from the raging wave. That silhouette had a sharp sword in his hand and his aura towered up into the sky. His sword intent towered up into the sky, incomparably sharp. Nie Tian. Lien Jiufeng's pupils shrank involuntarily as he exclaimed in shock. Only then did he realize that Nie Tian's eyes were pitch black, and his entire body was surging with a violent aura. It was actually the aura of power released from his martial body. It was extremely terrifying. How is this possible? Lien Jiufeng frowned. His expression was extremely ugly. He could not imagine that Nie Tian could actually erupt with such terrifying power. Right now, Nie Tian seemed to have activated some kind of forbidden power. His entire body radiated with an extremely violent demonic aura. It was as if he was a demon god that had walked out of hell. Lien Jiufeng, it's your turn. Nie Tian's pitch-black eyes were as dark as the abyss. He stared fixedly at Lien Jiufeng as he spoke in a cold voice. Right now, he was in a state where the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul, the Myriad Tribulation Saint Soul, and the God-Demon body were all activated at the same time. The pressure on his martial body was extremely great, and he could not maintain it for too long. He had to end the battle as quickly as possible. If you want to touch him, you'll have to kill me first. At this moment, a deep voice that sounded like murder rang out. Then, a figure appeared. It was 7 kills. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not think that 7 kills still had the strength to fight. 7 kills had only suffered some light injuries from the impact just now. It was not fatal. Die, brat! 7 kills' eyes were bloodshot, and his killing intent was extremely sharp. With a roar, he took a step forward, and a terrifying blade of extreme killing surged out of his demon eyes of supreme killing. Immediately, the surrounding space was filled with violent killing intent. The demon eyes of supreme killing focused on killing. It had almost reached the pinnacle of killing intent. Nie Tian could not help but frown when he felt the cold, killing intent rushing towards him. His expression changed. However, his eyes darkened in the next moment. The extreme demon annihilation seal appeared at the corner of his eyes. The demon eye trembled slightly, and a terrifying eye bloodline power was unleashed. It condensed into a blade of eye bloodline power in the air and attacked. Bang! In the next instant, the two eye energies collided with each other, causing a muffled sound to ring out in the air. It was as if metal had collided with stone. Following that, the sharp eye energies surged out, like thousands of sharp blades, slicing through the air. Feeling the sharp aura rushing towards him, Nie Tian immediately retreated. Ah! After he steadied himself, he suddenly heard a shrill scream. He frowned. He saw 7 kills covering his eyes in pain. His face was covered in blood. Nie Tian's expression darkened. He immediately realized that 7 kills' eyes had exploded. What happened? He was confused. He did not know what was going on. 7 kills. Lian Jiufeng was also stunned, and then he shouted. 7 kills' body trembled slightly, and then he fainted. Nie Tian frowned. He felt that there were 2 powers fighting against each other inside 7 kills' body. It was very strange. He must have forcefully used the power of the extreme killing demon eyes, which caused the mysterious star power in his body to resist. Under the confrontation of the 2 powers, his extreme killing demon eyes couldn't bear it, so he exploded. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded and he explained in a deep voice. Nie Tian nodded slightly, but he was silent inside. Emperor Chen had said that the Heavenly Wolf 9 Stars was a sacred artifact of the Heavenly Wolf race. Not everyone could fuse with it. Perhaps the profound stellar power and 7 kills demon eye of extreme killing were unable to fuse, and they clashed against each other, causing the demon eye of extreme killing to explode. Damn it! Lian Jiufeng growled as he stared at 7 kills on the ground. Then, he turned to look at Nie Tian with an extremely ugly expression. Given Nie Tian's current state, he did not have the ability to resist. At this time, Nie Tian suddenly turned around and stared at Lian Jiufeng like a wolf. Nie Tian, what do you think you're doing? Lian Jiufeng was clearly very nervous. His teeth were chattering, and he subconsciously blocked the entrance of the canyon. His eyes were panicked. I'll say it one more time, move. Nie Tian said coldly and murderously. There was definitely something fishy about the canyon for Lian Jiufeng to be so nervous. Perhaps the Emperor of the Underworld was inside the canyon right now. You'll have to kill me if you want to enter the canyon. Lian Jiufeng's eyes trembled, and he took a step forward. He was clearly very determined and unyielding. You're courting death. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he shouted coldly. Chapter 3595. Never change one's original intention, Lord Emperor of the Underworld. Lian Jiufeng's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard the voice. Get out of the way. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he growled again. He did not want to kill Lian Jiufeng, but if the latter dared to stop him again, he would have no choice but to kill him. Lian Jiufeng's expression was dark, but he still moved aside in the end. Nie Tian looked at the canyon in front of him, and without hesitation, he took a step forward and entered the canyon like a ray of light. Nie Tian, I never thought that you would be able to make it this far. The Emperor of the Underworld's deep voice rang out the moment he entered the valley. Nie Tian immediately felt a strong, pungent smell of blood enveloping him. I didn't expect you to sacrifice 7 kills just to open the gate of retribution. Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he spoke coldly. He stood coldly in the air and was very cautious. His gaze swept across the void, but he didn't find the Emperor of the Underworld. At this time, the Underworld Emperor was surprised and said, "You actually know about the punishing heaven gate? It seems like Emperor Chern has told you a lot of things." "I do know a lot of things. However, there are still many things that I don't know yet that I want to know." Nie Tian smiled faintly. His consciousness searched the void, not daring to be careless in the slightest. The voice of the Underworld Emperor was eerie and illusory, as if it came from all directions. Nie Tian couldn't see the figure of the Underworld Emperor, nor could he determine his location. "Nie Tian, what do you want to know? Ask away," the Underworld Emperor said calmly with a faint smile. He was not in a hurry to attack. "Who are you?" Nie Tian frowned and asked directly. "I am the master of the heaven-punishing devil heart, the devil punishing the heavens." The Underworld Emperor's voice rang out. Instantly, the air was filled with a strong smell of blood. He said, "You should be wondering why I appeared in the Realmverse." "Why?" Nie Tian's eyes darkened. "The heaven-punishing demon heart is far more powerful than you can imagine." The Emperor of the Underworld paused for a moment before he suddenly let out an eerie laugh. He said, "I once opened the heaven-punishing demon heart to the 9th heaven. At that time, I was the strongest person in the original ancient sacred world." Nie Tian frowned, a confused expression on his face. He didn't quite understand what the Underworld Emperor said. "Nie Tian, I believe the Archchen has already told you that this Emperor once invaded the Skywolf world." The Underworld Emperor was aware of Nie Tian's doubts. He laughed arrogantly and said, "At that time, what I need is to activate the power of the heaven-punishing demonic heart to its ultimate state. Unfortunately, this Emperor failed at the final moment of the heaven-punishing demon heart's activation. However, this Emperor did not give up. This Emperor personally sealed the heaven-punishing demon heart, allowing it to return to its original state. This Emperor is preparing to reawaken the heaven-punishing demon heart and let it reach its final state. Regrettably, the heaven-punishing demon heart cannot be awakened after being sealed. This Emperor tried all methods and finally discovered that the 3 lives meridian has a special stimulating effect on the heaven-punishing demon heart. Therefore, this Emperor searched all the sacred worlds and realms and finally found 3 family clans with the 3 lives meridian. This Emperor killed all the members of these 3 family clans, condensed their bloodline power, and infused it into the heaven-punishing demon heart. At that time, as long as this Emperor infused his own power into the demon heart would be awakened. In order to not cause a commotion, this Emperor ultimately decided to awaken the demon heart in the realm. As for the evil moon Skywolf, this was actually arranged by this Emperor a long time ago. The existence of the evil moon Skywolf was to allow this Emperor to smoothly return to the sacred world after becoming a sage in the realm. Every wolf Emperor of the evil moon Skywolf has been waiting for this Emperor's return. Towards the end, the Underworld Emperor actually laughed maniacally. Nie Tian's eyes trembled incessantly when he heard the Underworld Emperor's words. He didn't fully understand the Underworld Emperor's words, but he roughly understood what had happened. The Underworld Emperor had once developed the heaven-punishing demon heart to its limits, but he had failed in the end. In order to develop the heaven-punishing demon heart again, he had sealed the demon heart. Later on, in order to awaken the demon heart, he had accidentally appeared in the realm. And from the Underworld Emperor's words, Nie Tian also heard another very important piece of information: 3 family clans with the 3 lives meridian. The Underworld Emperor had killed the members of these 3 family clans and infused their bloodline power into the heaven-punishing demon heart. Coincidentally, 7 kills, blazing Jiufeng, and Cher were 3 people with the 3 lives meridian, and they had been born from the heaven-punishing demon heart. Nie Tian, your guess is correct. At this time, the Underworld Emperor's voice sounded again. He said in a low voice, 7 kills, blazing Jiufeng, and Cher were born from the 3 bloodline powers and the power of the heaven-punishing demon heart. It can be said that the 3 of them are the last bloodline of those 3 families. However, Cher was an accident that even I had underestimated. As the Underworld Emperor spoke, his voice became very strange. It was trembling slightly, as if he was worried about something. You are the master of the heaven-punishing demon heart, the enemy of their clans. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he said coldly. Cher and the other 2 had been born from the bloodline powers of those 3 families, and the Underworld Emperor had killed the members of those 3 families. Enemy of the clans? The Underworld Emperor laughed. His voice was extremely cold. You can say that. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He didn't expect the Underworld Emperor to say it so easily. It was as if the Underworld Emperor didn't think it was important at all. After all, the Underworld Emperor had destroyed 3 families. To a person like the Underworld Emperor, perhaps killing people wasn't something he cared about. What he cared about was power, supreme power. At that moment, the Netherworld Emperor said in a deep voice, Nie Tian, you're destined to become an expert who stands at the peak of the world, and your kindness will be the biggest obstacle on your way to becoming an expert. Perhaps it's because you're still too weak. When you've truly become stronger, when you've far surpassed others, you'll understand that those people are no different from ants to you. No different from ants? Nie Tian frowned. The corners of his mouth twitched as he sneered. Is that really the case? Martial artists were also human beings, just stronger ones. If they didn't respect life, then what was the point of a martial artist living? The current Nie Tian was indeed not strong enough. However, to ordinary people, he was already a godlike existence. However, in his heart, the respect he had for every living thing had never changed. Never change one's original intention. Nie Tian, I've told you enough, the Empress said coldly. At that moment, the Underworld Emperor's voice was heard, but it carried a hint of evil aura. Following this, the smell of blood in the void became unusually intense and violent. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as his heart sank. Chapter 3596. Blood Sacrifice Formation. Nie Tian's eyes flickered when he saw the giant blood-colored hand appearing in the air. He could feel a tremendous pressure coming from it, causing his heart to tremble. He had seen the giant blood-colored hand the first time he had entered the canyon. He had even died to it. To his surprise, the giant blood-colored hand had appeared once again. Bang! In the next moment, the huge blood-colored hand suddenly moved and descended from the sky. Like a blood-colored curtain, it madly pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes widened. He could feel a terrifying pressure coming from all directions, as if his body was about to be torn apart. Screw it! His eyes flickered as he let out a deep roar and prepared to unleash the destructive Earth Astral Soul. The destructive Earth Astral Soul was his strongest trump card against the Emperor of the Underworld. Nie Tian, wait a minute! The Ghost Monarch's voice suddenly appeared in a panic. Nie Tian's body stiffened. He was unable to resist as the giant blood-colored hand immediately surrounded him. Damn it! He let out a low roar as he sensed that the surrounding space was filled with an extremely dense, bloody energy. It was like steel needles stabbing into his body. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian was covered in blood. Ghost Monarch, what's wrong? Nie Tian asked while enduring the pain. If the Ghost Monarch had not stopped him, he would have used the destructive Earth Astral Soul. This is the punishing heaven's 9 sacrifices. With your strength, the destructive Earth Astral Soul is no match against the giant blood-colored hand. The Ghost Monarch said in a deep voice, If you had used the destructive Earth Astral Soul just now, it would have been a waste of energy. Nie Tian frowned, his face extremely unsightly. He could feel that he had no chance of resisting the giant blood-colored hand. The giant blood-colored hand was too terrifying. As the ghost monarch had mentioned, even if he used the destructive Earth Astral Soul, it would be a waste of energy. But what should he do now? He was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Nie Tian, the power of your bloodline is even more terrifying than I imagined. At this moment, the Emperor of the Underworld's voice rang out again. Then, a blurry black figure appeared, standing on top of the giant blood-red hand. Nie Tian could vaguely see the figure of the Underworld Emperor through the huge hand. But at this time, he was completely controlled by the blood-red hand and couldn't move at all. Nie Tian, Di Qin must have told you that I need the power of the 9 stars Heavenly Wolf to open the Heaven Punishing Gate. Then, the Underworld Emperor laughed wildly and said, unfortunately, he was wrong. This Emperor needs the power of the Punishing Heaven 9 sacrificial array to open the Punishing Heaven Gate. The Heavenly Wolf's bloodline power is only used to activate the Great Sacrificial Heaven 9 Sacrificial Heaven formation. Hearing what the Underworld Emperor said, Nie Tian couldn't help but tremble. It turned out that the Underworld Emperor had awakened the Heavenly Wolf Jiuqin for the sake of Jiuqin's bloodline power. The Heavenly Wolf 9 stars was not the key to opening the Punishing Heaven Gate, but the Punishing Heaven 9 sacrificial array. Nie Tian, don't you think it's a bit too late for you to only know this now? The Underworld Emperor laughed again and said, right now, you are restrained by the Hand of Blood curse and can only watch as you become the sacrifice of this Emperor's Punishing Heaven 9 sacrificial array. This must feel terrible. Ah. At the end, the Underworld Emperor laughed madly as if he had gone mad. Damn it! Nie Tian bellowed, his eyes bloodshot like a ferocious beast. But at this moment, he was too weak and had already lost the ability to resist. Moreover, he had used up a lot of blood energy in the battle against 7 kills and the others. His martial body was at its limit. Worst of all, he was restrained by the Hand of Blood curse and couldn't move at all. Jiufeng, bring the others in. At this time, the Underworld Emperor looked outside the canyon and said loudly. Yes, Lian Jiufeng answered and brought the other 8 people in. The Underworld Emperor wanted to use the bloodline power of Nie Tian and the others to open the Punishing Heaven 9 sacrificial array directly. The Underworld Emperor glanced at Lian Jiufeng and waved his hand, sending 7 kills and the others into the Hand of Blood curse. 7 kills and the others had been seriously injured by Nie Tian and were on the verge of death, but their bloodline power still remained. Jiufeng, did you hear what this Emperor said just now? At this time, the Underworld Emperor did not open the formation directly. Instead, he looked at Lian Jiufeng and asked. I heard. Lian Jiufeng nodded in response. He didn't even dare to raise his head to look at the Underworld Emperor. This Emperor is the enemy who exterminated your clan. Do you hate this Emperor? The Underworld Emperor's lips twitched as he asked with a smile. This subordinate does not dare. Lian Jiufeng trembled in fear and fell to his knees. He said, without the Lord Underworld Emperor, there would be no subordinate. This subordinate's life is given by the Lord Underworld Emperor. This subordinate swears to follow the Lord Underworld Emperor for the rest of my life. Humph. The Underworld Emperor looked at Lian Jiufeng and smiled faintly. He said, get up. I don't care if you follow me for the rest of your life. I only want your loyalty for this life. Lian Jiufeng nodded heavily. He did not raise his head to look at the Underworld Emperor. Nie Tian's face grew very unsightly as he witnessed everything that had happened. All right, everything is ready. We can begin. A moment later, the Underworld Emperor smiled faintly and formed a strange seal with his hands. Immediately, the Hand of Blood curse began to release terrifying blood blades. The blood blades directly pierced into the martial bodies of Nie Tian and the others and actually began to crazily absorb their blood. Oh no! Nietion frowned and exclaimed in his mind. He saw that the aura of the formation in the surrounding space instantly strengthened after their blood entered the hand of blood curse. Boom! A moment later, the entire canyon suddenly rumbled. The great sacrificial heaven formation of 9 sacrificial heaven was activated. At this time, the hand of blood curse began to release curse after curse. Dark and bloody, they slowly surged into the Underworld Emperor's body. The Underworld Emperor stood coldly in the air and madly absorbed the 9 sacrifices incantation. The heaven-punishing demonic chi on his body immediately grew stronger and stronger. The demonic chi around him roiled and churned. It was extremely terrifying. Nietion looked at the Underworld Emperor and felt the heaven-punishing demonic chi on the latter's body. His expression darkened. But now, he was powerless. He could not resist at all. As the Underworld Emperor continued to absorb the 9 sacrifices incantation, the heaven-punishing demonic chi on his body grew stronger and stronger. A dark energy slowly gathered inside his body and condensed into a solid form. A moment later, a ball of dark energy appeared behind the Underworld Emperor. It was like a dark abyss, exuding an abnormally strong heaven-punishing demonic chi. What a powerful heaven-punishing demonic chi! Nietion's eyes trembled when he saw the ball of dark energy. At that moment, the dark aura began to undergo a strange transformation. Very quickly, it gathered in the void and gradually turned into a door of darkness. Chapter 3597. Irreconcilable. When Nietion saw the door of darkness behind the Emperor of the Underworld, his eyes trembled and he was stunned. That door of darkness was like an endless abyss, surging with monstrous heaven-punishing demonic chi. That kind of dense aura was like a giant beast hidden in the void, opening its dark mouth, wanting to devour everything. Nietion looked at the door of darkness and felt as though his mind was being devoured. It was as though the door of darkness could strip him of everything in an instant. This was Nietion's first time encountering such a dark and terrifying aura, and it caused his divine soul to tremble. Even though he had a tough temperament, he couldn't help but panic at this moment. Without a doubt, this gate of darkness was the gate of heaven punishing that was born from the heaven-punishing demon heart. Punishing Heaven Gate has finally appeared. At this moment, the voice of the Emperor of the Underworld rang out. It was incomparably deep and filled with a tremendous pressure. It was as if even the heavens and earth were suppressed by this aura, and could only bow their heads in submission. At this moment, the Emperor of the Underworld was like a demonic god standing between heaven and earth. His entire body emitted a dark aura that suppressed everything. Looking at the Emperor of the Underworld, Nietion couldn't help but tremble. The fear in his heart was written all over his face. He did not expect the Emperor of the Underworld's aura to be so powerful. The sword heart of heaven and earth, the Buddha Bodhi heart, and the heavenly devil heart, shouldn't they be at the same level? Even if there was a difference in strength among the three, there shouldn't be such a huge difference. When Nietion activated the Sword of the Sky with his sword heart of heaven and earth, and when the Bodhi seed activated the Bodhi bead with his Bodhi Buddha heart, they were not as terrifying as the Underworld Emperor was now. It seemed that the Emperor of the Underworld's heaven-punishing demonic heart was far more powerful than the sword heart of heaven and earth and the Bodhi Buddhist heart. Could it be because the Emperor of the Underworld had once sealed the heaven-punishing demon heart, and now that the demon heart was opened for the second time, it released such a terrifying aura? Boom! Just as Nietion was in a state of bewilderment, the blood curse hand became even more berserk. It constantly absorbed his blood, causing the blood chi in his body to become incomparably berserk. It was as if his entire body was about to explode. At the same time, the blood-cursed symbols all over the Underworld Emperor's body became even more terrifying. They surged crazily, and a bloody aura filled the entire valley. Boom! Then, the gate of execution behind the Emperor of the Underworld suddenly vibrated, and then suddenly expanded, like a dark abyss. It began to expand, extremely terrifying. Nye Tian could feel the heaven-punishing demonic chi in the surrounding space. His eyes couldn't help but tremble and he was speechless. In the blink of an eye, the heaven-punishing gate grew to a height of several hundred meters. It was like a dark void that stood upright in the sky, constantly releasing an aura that could devour everything. Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he forced himself to remain calm. He didn't know what the Underworld Emperor would do next. After a while, the power of the blood curse hand seemed to weaken a little, and the pressure became a lot less, giving Nye Tian a chance to breathe. Nye Tian, it's not time yet. At this moment, the voice of the Ghost Emperor rang out. He knew that right now, Nye Tian wanted to use the power of the earthly extermination astral soul to break free from the blood curse hand. But right now, the blood curse hand was still too strong. Nye Tian couldn't break it if he attacked now. Yes. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he nodded solemnly. At this time, the heaven-punishing gate seemed to have grown to its limit. It did not expand any further, and like a wall of darkness, it stood tall in the sky. The heaven-punishing gate continued to release a monstrous amount of demonic chi. The power of darkness surged in the sky as if it wanted to devour and destroy everything. The heaven-punishing gate has opened. This is a path of blood sacrifice. Who will be the first to be sacrificed? At this time, the Emperor of the Underworld's deep voice rang out. Then, he looked at Lian Jiufeng and said solemnly, Lian Jiufeng, it will be you. Lord Emperor of the Underworld. Lian Jiufeng's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in shock. He was clearly panicking. He could feel an unusually strong killing intent from the Emperor of the Underworld. Nye Tian's eyes darkened. He was stunned. He didn't think that the Emperor of the Underworld would want Lian Jiufeng to be the first blood sacrifice of the heaven-punishing gate. Lian Jiufeng, it is your honor to be the first blood sacrifice of the heaven-punishing gate. The Emperor of the Underworld's eyes locked onto Lian Jiufeng as he declared loudly. The heaven-punishing gate slowly released a terrifying demonic chi the moment he finished speaking. It formed a heaven-punishing demonic hand in the sky. It was incomparably dark and seemed capable of ripping apart everything. Lord Emperor of the Underworld, are you really going to kill me? Lian Jiufeng's eyes trembled as he abruptly raised his head to look at the Emperor of the Underworld. He had actually calmed down quite a bit. Lian Jiufeng, didn't you just say that you were willing to follow me to the death? The Emperor of the Underworld sneered and said, Why are you hesitating when I ask you to sacrifice yourself to the heaven-punishing gate? I'm not hesitating. I just want to confirm if Lord Emperor of the Underworld really wants to kill me. Lian Jiufeng frowned. His eyes surged with flames, and a strange light appeared in them. At the same time, his lips curled into an evil smile. My words are as good as 9 cauldrons. The Emperor of the Underworld seemed to notice something as he stared at Lian Jiufeng. His expression changed slightly as he growled. Is that so? Lian Jiufeng's eyes narrowed slightly as the corner of his lips twitched. He said coldly, So 7 kills, Schwerer, and I are just sacrifices in your eyes. We are all willing to die if you need us to. Is that so? Of course. The Emperor of the Underworld sneered and said, Your lives are bestowed upon you by me. When I need you, you should be sacrificed. Sacrificed? Well said. Lian Jiufeng's gaze darkened slightly as great killing intent appeared in his eyes. He suddenly growled, Then should the 3 races of the lineage of 3 lives be sacrificed as well? The Emperor of the Underworld's expression darkened when he saw Lian Jiufeng. Then, he sneered, Lian Jiufeng, you've really grown up. How dare you question me? I will not live under the same sky as you for the destruction of my race. Lian Jiufeng's eyes were as dark as killing intent. He said coldly, practically squeezing out the words from between his teeth. The Emperor of the Underworld's eyes trembled, and his expression changed once more. he said. You knew that I was the one who destroyed your race? Emperor of the Underworld, do you think you can seal my memories forever? Lien Jiufeng's eyes were as cold as ice. He said sternly, I remembered everything the moment I set foot in the Saint's world. The Emperor of the Underworld's eyes darkened slightly, but then he laughed and said, It looks like I've underestimated you. The Emperor of the Underworld did not think that Lien Jiufeng would be able to release his memories of 3 lives. However, he did not panic at all. With his strength, killing Lien Jiufeng would only take an instant. Nie Tian looked at Lien Jiufeng and the Emperor of the Underworld with trembling eyes. He did not think that such a dramatic change would occur. Earlier, when the Emperor of the Underworld had tested Lien Jiufeng, the latter had shown respect and obedience. It was strange to Nie Tian. Based on his understanding of Lien Jiufeng, the latter was not an obedient sheep. Lien Jiufeng's calmness after learning that the Emperor of the Underworld was the one who destroyed his race did not match his personality at all. As it turned out, Lien Jiufeng had purposefully endured until this moment. Emperor of the Underworld, I'm not the only person you've underestimated. Lien Jiufeng smiled coldly at the Emperor of the Underworld. Chapter 3598. Even more ruthless. The Underworld Emperor's expression was cold. His eyes were like the abyss as they locked onto Lien Jiufeng. He had already opened the gate of punishing heaven. Coupled with his strength as a 9th-level heavenly justice Saint Monarch, killing Lien Jiufeng was a piece of cake. Even if Lien Jiufeng had awakened the memories of 3 lifetimes, even if he wanted to rebel, what could he do? He couldn't change the outcome at all. The Underworld Emperor had wanted to kill everyone present in the first place. Lien Jiufeng's sudden rebellion was just adding some fun to the show. Your confidence will destroy you, Underworld Emperor. The corner of Lien Jiufeng's lips twitched. His eyes shone with an evil light. Show me what you've got. The Underworld Emperor let out a laugh and said with a meaningful expression, You are an accident in this chess game of mine. I will let you die last, so that you will have a deeper understanding of what despair is. I look forward to the despair you speak of. A strange smile appeared on Lien Jiufeng's face. Then, he suddenly looked at Nie Tian and said, Nie Tian, a mere hand of blood curse shouldn't be able to trap you, right? Nie Tian frowned. His expression changed slightly. He didn't think that Lien Jiufeng would want him to stand out at a time like this. Lien Jiufeng seemed to have extraordinary trust in Nie Tian. He was certain that Nie Tian could help him at a time like this. Lien Jiufeng, the trump card you've prepared isn't Nie Tian, is it? The Underworld Emperor sneered and said, I admit that Nie Tian's talent is terrifying, but do you really think that a mere holy disciple can threaten me? The Underworld Emperor hadn't interacted much with Nie Tian, but he knew that Nie Tian's talent was far greater than other cultivators of the same level. Unfortunately, he was a peak Saint Monarch right now. No matter how heaven-defying Nie Tian was, he couldn't threaten him. Boom! As soon as the Underworld Emperor's voice fell, the hand of the blood curse suddenly shook strangely, as if it had been hit by a terrifying force. The Underworld Emperor suddenly sensed something. His gaze froze, and his expression changed instantly. Earth Annihilation, Astral Soul, come out! At this moment a deep roar rang out. It was none other than Nie Tian. After which, a vast amount of astral energy soared up into the sky, causing the blood curse hand to tremble violently, as though it was about to collapse. How is this possible? The Underworld Emperor frowned, and he instantly felt uneasy. He cried out in surprise, and his voice became shrill and extremely ear-piercing. He had never imagined that Nie Tian would be able to unleash such a terrifying power in an instant. Boom! 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 In the next moment, a terrifying power exploded. Suddenly, a huge ray of starlight appeared in the sky, like a sharp sword, and directly pierced through the hand of the blood curse hand. Immediately, a terrifying roar rang out, and the hand of the blood curse hand collapsed, turning into an endless amount of blood energy that scattered in the void. Then, a figure covered in blood soared into the sky like a sharp blade. He stood in the air, and his eyes were like the stars, staring at the Underworld Emperor. It was Nye Tian. Nye Tian. The Underworld Emperor's eyes suddenly trembled, and he was extremely shocked. He couldn't imagine how Nye Tian could release such a shocking power that directly shattered his hand of the Blood Curse Hand. Although the hand of the Blood Curse Hand's power was greatly weakened after the Heaven Punishment Array of 9 sacrifice was activated, it was still very powerful. Even an ordinary Saint Monarch Tianyi might not be able to break it. Nye Tian was only a heavenly charm saint disciple. How could he destroy the hand of the Blood Curse Hand? Nye Tian, you really haven't disappointed me. At this time, Lai Yin Jiufeng looked at Nye Tian and smiled faintly. Do you trust me that much? Nye Tian frowned and asked solemnly. Right now, he was in a very bad state. His blood energy had almost been completely drained by the hand of the Blood Curse Hand, and his face was frighteningly pale. When Qi Sha fought you back then, if both of you had used your full strength, the one who would have lost would have been him. Lai Yin Jiufeng laughed and said indifferently. Nye Tian's eyes focused. So Lai Yin had been waiting for that moment to see that he had an extremely powerful trump card. As expected, Lai Yin Jiufeng was very terrifying. Nye Tian, I've indeed underestimated you, Nye Tian said. At this time, the Netherworld Emperor calmed down. His gaze swept across Nye Tian, and then landed on Lai Yin Jiufeng. He said, but this Emperor's greatest miscalculation is still you, Lai Yin Jiufeng. You are too confident, Netherworld Emperor. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly, a strange light surging in his eyes. Is that so? The Netherworld Emperor's eyes darkened slightly, and he sneered. He said, this Emperor would like to see how the two of you can fight against this Emperor. Netherworld Emperor, if I want to defeat you, I must be even more ruthless than you. Lai Yin Jiufeng's eyes flashed. He said, aren't you curious why Qi Sha sacrificed himself so willingly? The Netherworld Emperor's eyes darkened when he heard Lai Yin Jiufeng's words. He exclaimed in surprise. In order to awaken the heavenly wolf Jiuchen, he did not hesitate to sacrifice Qi Sha. Qi Sha had willingly been possessed by Xian Chen and became a sacrifice for the heaven-punishing 9 sacrifices. At the time, the Netherworld Emperor found it a little strange. With Qi Sha's personality, why would he be so obedient? One had to know that Qi Sha had already disobeyed the Netherworld Emperor when he fought against Nye Tian. Qi Sha dared to disobey the Netherworld Emperor over such a small matter, so it was a little strange that he would obey when it came to his life. It was at this moment the Emperor of the Netherworld suddenly noticed something. His expression changed to one of extreme fear. He looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng with trembling eyes and asked, Lai Yin Jiufeng, what did you do? I told you, if I want to defeat you, I must be even more ruthless than you. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled coldly, his eyes shining with cold, murderous light. The Netherworld Emperor's eyes trembled. He was just about to speak, but he suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood. He said in shock, what did you do? Before Xian Chen took over Qi Sha's body, Qi Sha had activated Extreme Killing Soul Killing. Lai Yin Jiufeng's lips twitched as he said indifferently, Extreme Killing Soul Killing. The Netherworld Emperor's eyes abruptly shrank in shock. He said, Lai Yin Jiufeng, you actually made Qi Sha use blood killing just to kill me. He's going to die anyway, so why not kill you after he's dead? Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled coldly. His eyes were cold. It was at this moment that blood-colored runes appeared on the Netherworld Emperor's body. Then, they tore his body apart and turned him into a bloody man in an instant. Nye Tian was stunned. He was so stunned by the scene that he couldn't speak for a moment. He did not expect that the situation would take such a drastic turn and develop to this stage.